has like a pop-up thing and you can see yourself, right? You know if you're like in frame or not in frame or whatever, you know. So
I just switched these. This is actually kind of a new setup that I've been trying to. The different mics.
These are Shure mics or whatever.
Although
right?
my audio usually sounds really good, I think I could
change it?
sound it a little bit. It could definitely sound a little bit better. But I usually pop that up because I've done it a couple times where it stops recording and it's like
after 30 minutes.
No, I got this one because it's supposed to be super. It's supposed to. It plugs into a like a dummy battery, so it drives power right to it. So it should be good. I don't know why it ever stopped when it did or anything, but now I can at least just check over and see the little red recording.
And do you have to like speak into this like the shirt? Do you like be like
no, not really. I mean, it's kind of just like in front of you and what's best. I don't know. So you don't do much podcast like?
No, I do only YouTube. Basically, you know, I mean some social stuff, but generally it's all YouTube. Like everything I do.
We had me and a couple guys were up here last night. We were watching your video on your personal channel.
Oh, that was terrible.
But it was the metrics on your other channel, and like that was pretty wild. And then we
see them now, man. Crazy.
We were watching it because that was couple years ago, even
2.5 years ago, probably I did it. Yeah.
And we were like, wow, that seems crazy. But even when you go back and look, like you still had a big following and everything then.
Yeah, I think like I don't know, man. You know what? Numbers metrics are a hard one because like we're getting pulled in all sides. Like YouTube is a space now where it's hard to get new followers or new subscribers. So it's not an easy space. You can build YouTube to get only subs if you're doing like obviously pranks and all the usual stuff. Yeah. But if you're building like a car channel just to show cars, there's a million guys doing cars, including the guys that are doing their own cars, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're like, oh, I picked up a new car today, check my new car out. Yeah. But to actually like film it, I think what separates the channel from other channels in Canada, especially, is besides Unbox Therapy, is we have our own physical space that we can put a car in there. Big time. And we have lights that are like, I wanted lights like helicopter lights that would be like, hey, look at those lights. And when they see those lights, they'll think about me, right? You know, that's like one of those like differentiating factors. That's one. But then also like, man, London, Ontario. I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to post a video from London, Ontario on the YouTube algorithm and hope that it's going to compete with the same guys in California. Yeah. How do you know? Yeah. Right. You don't know that's going to be that way. But so basically just put it all together, pumped it out there. So yeah. So the way it works is, I get the cars, use all my contacts I can to get the cars. I'm the face, right? Yeah. I'm the face. And then like I do all the research. Now I hired my sister to kind of help me with the research because there's so much data you need, right? Yeah. There's so much data you need.
To
like
just be prepared for it.
Yeah, because I mean, like take an example this week. So this week we have 3 cars. We have 4 actually. So I have that Tesla Plaid. I don't know if you know, but I bought a Tesla Plaid. Sweet. About 6 months ago, and I've had a whole bunch of miles with it. And
I said you were there yesterday, right? Getting it all fixed.
Yeah. I was there exactly. I was at the dealer, so they gave me this Model X. So this week I'm like, I have never done a Model X before, so I thought I would do one. But then I'm like, the car they gave me is a Model X, but it's like 3 years old, so I can't put a new car because then everybody will be like, hey, it's not new, you know? Like this is like the updates are all different. So, but this week I've got this like Hyundai Elantra N, which is like very new to Canada. I'm like the second YouTuber that'll have one / journalist that'll have one. And then I'm getting this Kona N, which is another Hyundai product. That's next week. But this week I have an Audi e-tron GT RS, which is like a electric Audi, and then which is not that new. It's probably about like 6 months old in terms of like being out there in the markets. And then the third car I have is the BMW i4. So it's like a 4 Series Grand Coupe, but all electric. Cool. And then I had to go because I'm big on this like international investing thing, which we'll maybe talk about that. So this week I was at the Panamanian embassy doing a power of attorney, and then I was at the Colombian embassy, which nobody spoke English, by the way. I go to Colombian embassy.
Yeah, but you speak a bunch of languages, right?
Not so good, just enough to get around, right? Not to get around or like swear words like most people, right? You know. But yeah, so I went there. So like it's been a pretty crazy week, but yeah, YouTube is really good, man. It's good because I find that YouTube like rewards you even if you have a bad video. So even if you have like, it used to be like YouTube, if you put a good video, you do well, and then you have a bad video, you slumped. Now you slump, but you don't really die. Yeah. Right? Like if you have 3 bad videos in a row, your videos like crunch and get killed, right? So, but it's growing. Hey man, how do you know, right? Like you could just do this and then you keep going and you're like, this is actually becoming something.
What prompted you to get into like add YouTube to the
space, to the arsenal, I guess? I used to work at Audi. Yeah. That was like back in the day. I used to work at Audi. And then in 2019, I left at the end of 2019. I left for 2020, and then COVID happened, and so I had that studio, like that space, right? Like remember that space, and that space is basically I have a commercial flat roofing business, so that space was a 4,500 square foot building, and I cut it in half, and then I made half of it for YouTube, and the other half for roofing. You know, so I stored supplies and like all my rentals and stuff. It's just based on my stuff. I store stuff.
Yeah,
right?
for
We all
sure.
store stuff. So, but YouTube started. Yeah, YouTube started because when I was working at Audi, I always felt like an example of this is I had to deliver, let's say, like 10 Audi Q5s. So I'd have the customer come in and they'd be like, "Oh wow, you know, go over my car," because obviously manufacturers want the sales guys to go over the car like thoroughly. And we're like, "Cool, I can do it for the first 10 times, but I'm doing like 100 of these freaking things a year." So what do? You used to do videos. Do videos, shoot them all, and then I send it to them, and then they've already seen a walk around of it. They know the car. Yeah, I mean, I tailor a little bit more to them, specifically what they need, but at the same time, so it was like, and the car business in terms of like how much money you make was really tapering down fairly hard in the last 4 years.
Okay, as like a sales.
Yeah, you make no money, man. You make no money. It's volume. You make no money. Yeah, and I also felt like when I was at Audi at the time, and I was with Audi since 2005. So I bought my first rental in 2005.
Yeah.
And I bought my first rental in 2005, and then I started Audi just at the end, beginning of 2005, and basically, make a long story short, I was there for them forever. So I was basically the guy, like the encyclopedia. Anybody had questions, they'd come to me. Anybody at any point. So it was like free.
Were you like
brain
super
power,
into cars before you went to Audi?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, as kids, man, we always love cars. Every kid
definitely.
nobody doesn't love a car. But Audi was like, I always wanted to work for BMW. For me, it was like, I love BMW. I thought BMW at the time was like really making cool stuff, but they wouldn't hire me. They were all ignorant.
Sure.
And they were like, we don't want a young kid, especially one that, you know, and I was like, I moved to Canada when I was like 19, and I got a job working for Audi at like 21, 22.
Yeah. Did you move straight to London?
I moved to London from Dubai. I used to live in Dubai.
Yeah.
And then I moved to London at 17, met my wife. My wife now, but I met her, and then 18 moved to Toronto, and I was in Toronto, and then so basically I didn't really have a lot of Canadian experience, you know, as we need as immigrants, really, you know, and but Audi was good. So I rocked Audi for such a long time that it became like, and then at the same time I bought rentals, so my real estate portfolio started going up. I had side businesses because like when you're selling cars, you're like, twiddling. Anybody that sold cars is like, hone your sales skills, get talking, but selling a premium brand, you're not busy. This is not Honda or Toyota. You're not having like 20 people a day. We're having like 2 people a day.
Yeah.
So like instead of twiddling thumbs, my brain is like got to work. So I start doing like side businesses, right? You know, and then they start growing and taking off. And then at the end of the day, Audi at the end of all those years became an office for me.
Sure.
Right, where you're just like there doing office stuff, which happens to also be your job, but you don't get paid per hour. You get paid when you sell something.
Yeah.
So the incentive is to sell something, but then the incentive is also not burn your brains by sitting around, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So kind of a mixed bag. So nowadays I'm like big into this like diversity thing, because like we're obviously, like everybody knows, like real estate's like the only conversation for people.
Was there
right,
any sense of was it strictly kind of like, I'll use the word tutorials lightly for your customers that wanted the videos, but like was there a point where it switched from like, again, tutorial videos to like making content to like, okay, maybe I can stretch out the different brands of cars and everything like that? Was there a turning point, or is it always like, I'll start this way and then I still want to push it big to... Yeah,
like, man, the best thing about YouTube is your customers comment, right?
Yeah.
Like those are your customers. So like comments are a big space. So you put your stuff out there, people comment. And what really took off was I did an Audi Q7 versus Audi Q8 video. So 2 SUVs. And at the time, because I was still like straight up fob, I was like, look at these trucks. Like, look how beautiful these trucks are. The best trucks ever. And people were like, it's not a trucks. Truck. It's not a truck. So like all the keyboard warriors were like crazy, right? So then that video out of nowhere just like, boom, flew up. And I was like, man, this is crazy. You know, it's a real thing now, right? And then definitely. Like you start seeing like ad revenue, and especially when if you watch that video.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was
know?
Great. Yeah.
And that was just like my cell phone, like basic stuff, you know? And I kind of like those like basic, you know, like honest videos, right? Where you're just like yourself, you're just like, this is it. Crazy.
Take it or leave it. Yeah.
Take it or leave it. This is what I want to put out, because I want to watch that video 10 years from now or whatever, right? But so when you see like the metrics where you're making like $2 a day, $15 a day, and then like suddenly you get to $40 a day, you're like, what? $40 a day? Yeah. I'm like, this is lunch and dinner.
So if you don't mind me, what kind of like, at what subscriber
Ask
count,
me anything.
What subscriber count did you start seeing any kind of ad? Like I have like...
Yeah. So it's not a subscriber count. Let me just stop you there. It's subscribers absolutely mean dog shit.
Okay.
Like it's not, subscribers are important from a, hey, like I'm Vitamin Water, sponsor me, I've got 200,000 subscribers. Sure. Whereas like I could have, like one of my biggest claim to fame when I go to any of these places, I'd be like, look, I don't have a lot of subscribers, but I have a shit ton of views. People watch me, but they don't subscribe because the world has gone now from like your phone to your TV to your Android box. So for them to actually subscribe is not that easy, right? So
even view wise, when did you start? Was it like you were getting tens and then hundreds and then thousands?
So one pivotal point was Audi was, and I was still working at Audi at the time, and Audi, I think I launched a channel, or at least started to make some headway when there was a guy in service, like this younger guy in service. I said, hey man, do you mind, like, can you film me, and just, this is my plan, is what I want to do, can you film me? So I did a couple videos with him, and then before I met my current partner, Ian.
I know him. I don't know him, okay, but one of my, Adam Chapman, he's good friends with him. So Adam, I mentioned this to him this morning. He goes, sick. He's Northern, right?
Yeah. He was at Northern.
Okay. So it's the same person, but small world. So
London, Ontario, man.
Yeah. So sorry, you.
Yeah. So
you were doing it all cell phone.
So I was like doing it myself. So I got him. Then he taped a couple, and so I think I had like 6 videos at the time, or 5 or 6 videos, and it was called Audi Sport Mike, because in London, if you wanted to buy an R8, you'd have to only use me because I was like the special guy because of Audi R8s, whatever. But what happened is Audi's launching the A6. Okay, this was like a big deal for them, the new body style A6. So Audi was saying, like, we're getting, they're spending all this money, and they're going to get, over a 2-month period, they're going to get 6 million impressions. This is what they're saying. Okay, so they're going to spend all this money. Because remember, manufacturers don't know shit about digital. Sure. They know to spend dollar amounts to an ad campaign, sitting in a room like this with a whole bunch of suits, are like, yeah, okay, this is what's going to cost, 6 million. These guys are like, no idea, but 6 million sounds like a lot.
Try and do it, yeah.
Yeah. So I had 6 videos out there, and then I saw this thing, and it was like a big powwow meeting, and I was like, this big thing, and I was like, I was like trying to speak my heart out at the meeting and saying like, okay, 6 million is not that big, and they're like, well, you don't know what you're talking about and all this stuff. So I would like really preach how I was like, I'm onto something, man. Let's do something.
Yeah.
That was my thing. And anyways, at the time with that, I had like I remember showing the owner, I said I had like just about 2 million impressions from my 6 videos. And I'm like one dude with like no Ian. I just had just a normal guy that would film for me, and we had that. And then, I got introduced through Ian, through a mutual friend. And then, so when I saw that pivot point, I thought, okay, man, I got to go in on this thing, right? So I was like asking around, do anybody know anybody, a good editor? Because I've tried to be like, man, and as time goes on and you become a better business person, you start realizing you can't do everything. Like you have to partner, sub out, or just cut the bill and get it, right? Yeah. So, but I didn't want somebody that's like me, super energetic, sometimes, like an overseer, right? Or a bit of a control freak sometimes. I wanted somebody that's like totally good in his game, totally easygoing, and I found the perfect guy, man.
Because Adam described him the exact same way. He's like, because I'm always, like even for the gym, looking to do videos and always kind of, and he goes, and that he's like, Ian's a very like, he's awesome at what he does. He kind of lets you do what you want, as far as like, not you per se, but the customer do what they want to do, and then he kind of just does his magic with and he's very like, let it go, and like kind of
I try to tell everybody, man, I'm like he makes me look good. I can only do so much, We try to work with what YouTube gives us. Like it was like, okay, do long format videos and then do the short format videos, and I said this the other day. I said some days we just wake up and we're good. And sometimes I'm just today's the day I'm gonna be good on camera. I know I'm gonna get. Other days I wake up and I'm like, oh, this sucked. Yeah. Like today I was doing this Elantra, and I was like, this car is really good when you drive it. It's manual transmission. It's got all this stuff. It's a really sporty 4-door sedan that's like a real budget type car. But like talking about it, it's like, it's hard on the outside because I'm like, you got to drive it to feel it, right? Yeah. So it was like pulling teeth for me a little bit, as opposed to like we do a Benz S Class that takes so much detail, and by the time I go through it all, and then we'd drop the video, and it's like it gets like, sounds terrible, but it gets like 60 to 80,000 views, and we're like, that sucked. Yeah. And we're like, we want like 250 and up, which is like a dream, but which I still like hit myself, be like, okay, listen, buddy, like, like it's a metrics. I'm in a metrics game, unfortunately. Totally. It's kind of become that, right? So it's been really good, man. But Ian's really good. He makes me look so good on camera. It's a blessing to have him.
So how long has he been a part of it? Most of it?
I would say very close to the beginning. Very close to. It was called Audi Sport Mike before, and only because of that. But once we left the It's all good, man.
Train,
it's not gunshots. It's,
no,
it's a train,
no.
So we're good.
It's kind of cool because it's like natural too. It's
Yeah.
like you can see it though.
Yeah,
like
dude,
right
we're in New
there.
York, right? This is shot in New York, right?
Yeah, right.
Perfect,
We flew down.
But no, man, Ian's been there. Ian's been there pretty much since day one. Since
Cool.
it became something real, he's been there.
And you guys didn't really know each other previously to that?
No,
You
never.
just
Never.
meshed
Never.
though pretty
yeah,
good?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm always trying to think about how he would feel. So like when we were first rocking these things, I was like, man, am I doing it okay? UK, is it too fast, too long? Am I talking too fast? How do I look? Like, and then now I watch those videos and I'm like, dude, my shirt was off. You know what I mean? I was talking way too fast. I'm like, why don't you tell me anything? And he's like, you were perfect.
Do you ever like, because I kind of go through that, not as like mine, this is very,
no, dude, it's the same,
like
it's the same, it's the
simple,
same, it's the
but
same.
did you let that stress you out? You're like, fuck it, I'll just do it different next time. I'll improve next time. Or you're like, go back and delete that one, or
First
you
of all,
good?
can we swear?
Of course.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck, perfect.
Yeah. Anything goes here. Yeah, like seriously.
Okay. No, because it's funny because Ian, if hopefully he watches this, but he'll always try to keep me on ground because he's like ad revenue, ads, make sure the advertiser friendly. And I'm like, fuck that, you know. But he's like, he always keeps me like at bay.
In lane.
No, man, I think that like. I think that yes, it does. I always feel that I can do better because better is out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
That's the problem for me. It's like better is out there, and I'm like, man, I want to be better, like others. Like that have put their like. There's basically like what I would call two main channels in Canada. Throttle House is one of them, and Straight Pipes is the other. Throttle House, with our communication, they're sort of independent. They kind of do their own thing. They don't really. I feel like they're in their minds and on paper they're at the next tier. So
where are they?
They're all in Toronto.
Okay,
They're both in Toronto. Yeah. So Straight Pipes is a little bit less like they're in Toronto, but they're more like just two dudes in a car driving around, just having a good time and talking about cars.
Do you ever watch? Do you like Daily Driven Exotics? Do you ever watch?
Yeah, they're
that?
out of Vancouver, right?
Yeah. You hate them or you like them?
You know what? I feel like it deserves a fan base for that kind of stuff.
They're a little different, right? They're more like I don't know, like
yeah, they're more like, how do I put this? They're more like a
show,
like a show, like produce show,
thing.
exactly. And they're
entertainment,
and they're also
based.
so far. And the crazier shit they do, the better it becomes for them, right? Whereas we're just a new car review channel, and we're very simple.
Yeah.
I think that if it emerges into something bigger, who knows, man? At the end of the day, like right now, we're in the way the Canadian system works. So if I talked about like Throttle House and Straight Pipes, we as a third or fourth or fifth Canadian channel, depending on who you ask, that industry was full of writers, right? It was all writers. The way the Canadian media worked is that all the writers would write about cars. And in Canada, we get cars between 2 and sometimes 6 months after the US. But YouTube only judges us on Canadian on product now. Yeah. So if like a Doug DeMoro, who's like the biggest Canadian, right?
Who that is, yeah.
Doug DeMoro reviews like the whatever car now. Like he does a Lucid Air, which is like a Plaid competitor is Lucid. If he does a Lucid Air 6 months ago, we're all desperate trying to get a Lucid right now in Canada. We can't even get one. Yeah. Right? And then like Throttle House just did one, let's call it a month and a half ago in California. So they're going to the US and they're filming this stuff. So I'm like, yo, let's go to the US and film, right? Because that's what, like, for me, that's the next portal because I see an opportunity, I see a positive, I see it's going to work, right? You know what I mean? So that's where we're standing as Canadians go. But the writers don't care about Lucids because they're not even in Canada. You can't even buy them. Yeah. There's a showroom right now, and I think it's in Shoreway or whatever. Yeah. But you can't even get to it. So if you don't have access to the stuff,
it's kind of irrelevant.
They don't care. They only care about cars that are in the dealership now. So like maybe a new Highlander or something that. But just
that's kind of like not detrimental, but that doesn't help you at all. Meaning being a guy who wants to go to other places and get in the cars then and there.
But remember, the people before me are writers that have been there for 25 years. Yeah. So I'm competing against those guys for new cars, and we're like, well, why would you get it? You just started, right? So I'm like, hey, look at my metrics, because I'm like, my metrics will get cars for us. Whereas without metrics, we're not getting any cars. I'm just like, hey, you're my buddy. Can you give me a car? You know? Yeah. And as much as like buddy, it's like, no, man, like I got to follow the rules, right? You know? So I mean, I'm really trying to do something like we've been lucky. Like this BMW we have right now is like the car before it was a Volkswagen Tiguan, which I got from Dalmar here, Willie, awesome guy. Yeah. So I got a thing from him, and not to plug anybody, but he's a really good guy. I've got like almost 500,000 views on that thing, and then I had this BMW M240, which is a coupe, a low volume car. They don't sell a lot of these things, and I have like 75,000 views on that thing. And then after that, I had a Nissan Frontier, so a pickup truck. Yeah, it had 400,000 views. So I sent this to BMW because they weren't getting back to my calls for like the last month and a half, and I screenshot this thing and I'm like, hey, at BMW, I'm like, dude, it's not me, because he's probably just thinking, okay, 70,000 views is okay, but I mean, like with the Straight Pipes, I get like 500. With Throttle House, I get 700, whatever. Numbers. They're strong numbers. I'm just going to give it to those guys. I'm going to fill in the gaps with my writers. But I'm like, no, can I be the third guy? So I'm like really at this push that I'm like, man, I want to get these things out. And so I try to be funny. I try to be like as like entertaining as I can, because YouTube is entertainment, man. It's not just 250 horsepower, 275 feet of torque. You know, it's not like that anymore, right? It's about like, it's about just putting entertainment out there.
Definitely.
And people watching it, right?
Relating,
you know, so
and just being, your personality.
Being a dude, right?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Being a guy that's like, so honestly, like the only difference that separates anybody doing this stuff in my mind, good mics, is really just a number, right? You know what I mean? Like that's why with Straight Pipes, and I'm really cool with them because I was like to them, I'm like, never change. This is like a year and a half ago, and they've always, through this year and a half, they've always helped me and given me advice. And they said, like, you know, you haven't got this car yet. Hey, talk to this guy, he'll hook you up. And I'm like, dude, this is amazing. You think like,
sure, yeah.
In the car business, is like, don't talk to that dealer because they're like this, you know. And like the roofing business is like, yeah, don't, you know, these guys stole my guy. And I'm like, everybody hates each other in this world. But then on YouTube, we're like cool with everybody. We're like, the customers will all watch our stuff
for sure. So, they don't care. Yeah, those probably people that are outwardly.
Old school, bro.
It's old school, right.
Old school,
they kind of, I guess now though, they probably exploit themselves to being those people that are like becoming the don't go to him type of person.
Yeah, I mean, like in theory it will be, but you know what, man, London's a weird town, but also like I think the world is different. Like, sure, there's like that on the real side, but then you think about like all the fake influencers, all the scammers, all the guys that are like buying. Man, I remember going on a trip, like a YouTube trip 4 years ago, and it was real estate related. But one of the kids there, he was probably 18 or 19. He went to the Gucci store and bought all this swag. He bought all this stuff for like $5,000. He wore it all, took tons of pictures, returned it the next day. And then like you look at his stuff now, and he's got like 250,000 followers or whatever, and it's all borrowed shit. It's not even his stuff. They'll go borrow watches from you.
Yeah.
Borrow watches, swag, picture. I was here, you know.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So you think about like that's like the Instagram life. The real life is like guys can like home builders, London, Ontario, home builders. Home builders can build houses. They can scam, like they can build 10 houses, get a whole bunch of drywall crews in there, have them drywall guys do all the drywall, and then they'll say, well, I'll pay you on the 11th house because this guy screwed me, and then go bankrupt. And then you got all these drywalls that have no money.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, this is the real scam, and then you have this as a real scam. So you're like, scam here, scam there.
What is going on?
What is going on, right? You were like, I'm just trying to be a normal guy.
Yeah. Be honest and like, just,
longevity, right?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. And building that, like, people can ultimately filter out and relatability to like someone who's posting stuff that's not theirs versus.
I know. It kills me, man. And I'm like, and I think about all this stuff, and I'm like, for what? For money. And it's like, what does that money allow you to do? Buy more materialistic shit, right? Buy more whatever it is you want to buy. It essentially just buys you that, and then you need to keep buying and filling this, this constant nonsense. You know, just tell your wife we're not buying it.
Yeah.
Tell your guy you're not.
Do
right?
those dealerships? Yeah. When they like, do they see an increase in people going and opting for the particular cars or is it more so just like exposure thing for them?
Like you're talking YouTube or just like people's purchase?
Yeah, like YouTube, when you're working with a dealership or something like that. It's just like, here, take this for. They don't like. Yeah. So people go and like? Do they have 10 people at their door over the next week?
No, because so here's the thing. I'm very anti like saying like, hey, you have to buy this car and this sponsored by let's this dealership, right? That totally kills my fan base, right?
Yeah,
so like I'm not into that stuff. What I have done though is like, so for example, like the only real dealership, two dealerships, Porsche and Volkswagen, have given me cars just starting out, and they're very easy to get. They're like, yeah, take this, take whatever you want, right? So when I do say that, when I bring like, let's say this Volkswagen Arteon, so there's not a lot of Arteons out there, which is like Volkswagen's bigger, like more luxury sort of four-door sedan, and so they gave me the car, and I was like, well, this car is, you know, at Dollar Motors. If you guys want it, go see it, whatever. And then, like 3 days later, the car was
someone sold it.
Yeah. So that kind of helps because you have that. So then that puts on like, hey, what we did worked, but it wasn't really to try to sell the car.
Like it's very much a you help me, I help you type of relationship when they say, hey, take this car. They're not saying like, hey, take this car, show them stuff. Yeah. Like they don't really have too many underlying incentives most of the time.
I think it really comes down to how I feel when I sleep at night, because I'm going to say bad stuff about the car. Yeah. No car's perfect.
I guess
nobody's perfect. Right? Nobody's perfect.
For
you know, we're all learning, you know, and some cars are just built to serve a certain purpose. And like, look at some domestic products. They don't make sometimes the best products, but they have the best financing products, or they have the best product to get the most commission for that dealership or that salesperson, right? You know what I mean? Which needs to make that whatever X amount of dollars per year because they're so used to making that, right? So they're like, just jam more products to the people. So that part to me is like, oh, it's the icky part of the car business. And I'm like, oh, I hate that, you know? And that part really bothered me. And throughout the years, I was like, oh, it's such a comfy job that I'll only be selective to my people, right? I wasn't making the most money at my dealership. There was more people making more money, but I was more comfortable in that space, right? You know? And I think, man, it really depends on what your purpose is on YouTube. If you're going to YouTube and saying, hey, like, I got this brand new 2020, whatever, people are going to be like, next. You're going to get no views, right?
For sure.
There's a couple dudes that will promote. So like if you work for Ford, let's say, for example, or work for GM, and you're only talking about your brand and you're going over the car, then you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've seen dealerships, certain dealerships have like what look like pretty successful and like high metric YouTube channels. And it's like, you know, if you're going, or more so like if I've already bought my truck, like I'll go, you know, or something like that. It's not like,
like that's not, it's not obviously like, there's two things. I think it's like it's just so weird. Like with the real estate guys right now, they're saying like time on the market versus time in the market because the markets are slowly shifting. So people like always change their narratives on how they speak.
Sure.
Right. That's just the way the world is.
Well, it kind of would have been, I guess, like what they're doing, you know, would have been, I guess, your main motivation to start in the beginning and giving your customers tutorials on these things.
Yeah,
like,
just to speed up time.
I guess you wanted to
not repeat yourself,
but become more, you know, not just stuck to that dealership and like.
Yeah, like in my mind, I thought, look, if I put out content, then number one, I think it's always like, I just try to think from a selfish standpoint of like, how am I going to grow? If I'm looking at a camera and can I grow? Yes. If I'm like doing this, like, hey, like look at this car, it's great. No one's going to watch me, and I just don't look good, right? You know, so I have to like get better. Also, I'm very hyper, so I just like to move all the time. I cracked 40, so the hyperness is slowly fading. But I'm like, I gotta hold it together.
Though,
you know. But I mean, YouTube's been really, really good for that. And I think like anybody that comes across my path and they're like, man, I was thinking about YouTube. I'm like, dude, just do it, put it on. Who cares? Who cares? At least you see yourself.
So right? How long ago was YouTube started?
It really started about 3 years ago.
Okay, so did you find
with a studio, right? Because the studio really was what started it.
Like, it was made it kind of official kind of in your own books.
Before we were outside, like standing, be like, "This is the car. It's great. Look at it, raining." You know.
Did you? Were you? Because like even on social media now, you're not. I don't want to say like outspoken, but like comfortable being on social media and like, you know, just being yourself and stuff.
For sure.
Were you like that pre?
Man, nobody's like that.
YouTube?
Nobody's like that. No. The problem is if you're like that, you're a salesman, right? You're a real true like 8 type salesman, like you can or like really like I'm still not like that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard, right? It's hard because you're just like, I can do it and then I can be like, okay, that looked like crap. Like I just like my lisp or like, you know, my nose hair was sticking out or whatever, right? Because unfortunately people are judgmental on what you look like, right? It's just the way of the world. If you want to get some traction into it, you know? But now I just feel now it's been to the point where I'm just like passionate about what I talk about. I'm like, yo, real estate's overpriced in this country. Like don't invest here anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, everything is just all being paid by over leveraged like assets by banks. So like I'm really into that stuff. Cars I'm really into because I'm like, man, everybody loves cars. Don't buy this car. It sucks on gas or whatever, right? So I'm like opinionated, I guess. I think that's an angle. And like I'm working with this guy on a restaurant and I'm like, worst idea ever, you know? I'm like it's a negative. And when I look at my income every month, I'm like, this one's a negative, you know? But I'm like, that's cool because that motivates me to be like, okay, how can I filter it out this in different ways, you know? But man, it's like any other business I have. It's like it's always brought to you by a stronger partner or a partner of equal value, right? Like they're either stronger than me or they're equal to me. I don't think I bring much more to them than they bring to me. They need me just like I need them, but I'm like, I try to find somebody that's totally different than me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really a big factor. And sometimes that takes years to find the right person, you know, and I've tried many times to find people and it just doesn't work.
Do you go into many business ventures like solo then? Or is it a strong thing for you? It's like, I'm doing something, I'm partner is the way to go.
I'm always trying to find an angle, right? Like I'm trying to find an angle. So like, for example, the roofing company. So I was in Toronto at the time and I had a whole bunch of rentals by Fancho and Western and I needed to get roofs done. So what I did is I went on Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace, which wasn't strong at the time, but basically Kijiji, and I got 3 quotes. I got a quote from this Colombian guy and then 2 Canadian guys, let's call it, right? You know, and I got quotes and the Colombian guy was just cheaper. And he was like, I was like, well, it's a rental. And at the time you're buying rentals, you're like cheapest first, right? You know? So I was like, you know, go with that direction. He did a whole bunch of roofs for me, did awesome work. And I was like, wow, this guy's really, really good. So 2 years later, I moved to London and I met up with him and he was doing my house at the time. I called him for a quote, did my house. And I said, well, how's business? And he said, you know, it's okay, but my English isn't the best. And I was like, well, I'm like, opportunity. Yeah. So that's how it starts, right? Cool. It starts like that. Cool. And now it's been like, we've been doing it for 11 years. He's my partner in it. You know, he does all the work. I do all the business side of it, right? So like, we're totally different. Cool. I don't do the roof part. I know everything about it.
Do you have any businesses that are just strictly you?
Off the top
like
of my
other
head,
than your,
yeah. So like, I mean, like I do like, listen, man, any salesperson or any sales guy or any entrepreneur is going to do like a business that only lasts for 6 months, right? Yeah. So like, let's say for example, this truck to the US stuff, right? I mean, like you rock the car for 6 months, you're like, whoa, it's worth more money in the US, ship it to the US, get your money back, right? Like very easy stuff like that. You're making 10 grand, 15, 20 grand. Everybody's doing different types of numbers. But that's like an easy business that
like
you're doing.
Like when you bought your first,
yeah. So rentals and properties are completely me. So like,
okay. So when you bought your first one at like what, 21 or something like that, that was your like, I got this.
Yeah. Well, because what happened is that I worked in like all kinds of crummy jobs before Audi, like I worked for one like Canada Post, like subsidiary, and I had to like lick the letters that were not licked. One of those crappy jobs. I worked like dusting like computers from POSs and like all the dust comes back. I did a lot of shitty jobs. So I had a T4 that I had like 12 grand saved up. So I used that RSP saved up so I could take that money and buy your first house. So I bought one on Trot Drive by Western here. And that was like my first student rental. And at the time I was like, man, I was single 21 and I'm like, oh, let's get student rentals because girls, right? You know what I mean? So I just kind of got as many student rentals as I could. And then like, oh, that's cool. That was an angle, right? You know what I mean? For me. Yeah. So that's how it started. I can't be like, I will 100% never say like, I was thinking one day I need to buy an investment property. And like none of this BS that people talk about now. I was like, no, at the time I'm like, hey, I got this. This is an opportunity and I'm going to go with it. Yeah. Just like right now when like budgets are rolled out through government, I'm reading those budgets and I'm like, hey, opportunity here, opportunity there. I highlight it and then I forget about it. And then like 2 years later, I open it up and I'm like, oh, wow, it's changed. Yeah. How do I attack it, right? Sure. And I'm like, let me partner with somebody that's willing to attack it. I'll come with the money and I'll front it, you know, just like private lending is a perfect example, you know? So that's something I do myself. I don't have anybody, same with the rentals and how it grew, and I'll get back in that, but my brain really thinks 1,000 times.
Trust me, I got you.
Good?
Yeah.
So with private lending, it's like, okay, so on Instagram, I'm like, hey, like if anybody wants to buy a flip, and then I'll fund the flip, you fund the rental, I'll fund the flip, I'll fund the piece, and then we'll split it at the end, or I can just private lend you that money. So I get anywhere between like 12 and 14 points. I loan the money out for 1 year and I collateralize it, obviously, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. And I'm like, hey, that's just me. And it's just from your phone. Zero marketing. Yeah. Man. So I'm like, why don't I just invest more time into social? It's like
totally right.
No, like not a care in the world, right? Like it's just like boom. So I mean, there's that like kind of movement of doing stuff yourself, but the rental side of it was like, so it just basically became like student rentals. I got rid of all my student rentals because I was just too much headache, like trying to get a May to May and then have them seeing in December and it's all dirty, messy. And anybody in the student rental business will tell you, it's never a clean May to May. It's always messy, right? So got rid of that. And then I bought like duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and I bought a bunch of those, all between like 120 to like 180 grand, just a whole bunch of them because I had money from this one. And I was still making money at Audi. I was in Toronto at the time, so I was making decent money. And I bought more, and then I started selling pieces of those off, just becoming headaches. Markets went up in 2015. I sold quite a bit of that, and I started buying apartment buildings. So then it went from that to apartment buildings, and then so I've just had a bunch of apartment buildings now. Cool. And then I've just been selling one-offs, and just buying stuff here and there. So
cool. I've been 2022 is my year. That's been probably one of my biggest goals is to like get my first one.
Virgin stuff.
So yeah, really, honestly, and like this might lead to more. I definitely, but because I'm basically essentially where I guess probably where you were when you were 21 and just like starting.
It's a path, right? Yeah. It's a path. Yeah. I like I'm doing this thing on Sunday. I started doing this like mastermind.
Yeah,
things,
I saw.
Right?
I kind of saw. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more like because I'm like I have all this data and I want to go look at it. Like I wish I recorded my stuff when I was like 30, and I wish I recorded my stuff when I was 20. I know what I did at the time, but I didn't really know how I felt or how I thought at the time. And I feel like I wish I could like encapsulate that stuff. And that's why I feel like now I'm like everything I go, I just have to document it because then I know what I was thinking. Because then 10 years from now, I'd be like, wow, you're an idiot. Yeah. Or like, wow, you're onto something.
Different insight, just different perspectives in general.
Yeah, man. And like, and these like this thing because I have this space, right? Like, so I was thinking like, I have this YouTube space. And I'm like, man, it's just sitting there and I'm paying like this money in taxes and just like this, right? You're like, I have this space, I'm paying it. I'm like, let's just use it because then at least you have like some sort of like, you've done something with it, right?
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
Like this is
I know.
sick,
like
you know?
for not to interrupt, but
no.
Even then it's like I had this for a while. I always like flirted with renting it out as like an venue type of thing, and I had it on Facebook, and and then but it's still a private spot, and I got private stuff up here, and just and I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm fine paying it out of pocket, but let me start to like use the podcast and like whatever else comes of it. But
and I mean, like these things kind of they cross collaborate, right? You know what I mean? Like, like, hey, I saw you there, and like, hey, and I'm like, hey, you should get on. It all kind of vibes, and. But yeah, man, no, it's
so Sunday, you're having it there.
Get me back on track here.
I'm the same way. You're just like one thing after the other.
So Sunday, so I had, I've called this thing like income. I was trying to find a name. Is always so cringy, right? You're like, what do you call it? And you're like, oh, money wins the world or some nonsense. I'm like, oh, whack. So I called it Income Diversity University because I'm like, I'm like half brown, half white. I'm like diversity, if maybe the face or something, And then I'm like diversity is like how I have like all these different incomes, and it's like it just kind of created. From like, and this is not a new topic at all, but I was like income, money, diversity is like lots of different money things, and university because I'm like it's got to sound kind of legit for like the algorithm, you know what I mean? So that's what I came up with. So the first event was like 2 days. I had 10 people, and I was in the space, and it was like crazy, man, because like I was like I earmarked or postmarked in my brain I'm gonna be like from like 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. but we ended up starting like 8:30. And then we ended up finishing like 1:30 in the morning.
Sure.
And then like the next day was the same thing.
The best part about it.
I know, man.
Like, other than I'm sure long hours, but like
cankers in your mouth.
That's pure
awesomeness. Man.
Just enjoying yourself. You're not going to do it like unless you're like, it's 1 o'clock.
I know.
Like we're 7 hours past when we thought.
No, man. No. I mean, so that was like the first thing, and everybody was like energetic, and they were like so engaging, and they kept asking me questions. And the other thing is everybody's sitting down, and I'm like, okay, well, this is only stopping if you guys are getting up and leaving. Because I'm like, I'll just wait. The more questions you ask me, the more I can feel like, I'm like, I don't know the answer. And like everything I'm saying, like, I don't know the answer. But I'm like, if you just focus at the end, like if you have a relationship and you just focus at the end, and even if she's crazy in the middle, it doesn't matter, man, because you'll get there, right? They'll all learn. We all grow. Every decade we grow as humans. She might not be the person for you the first 10 years, but the next 30 she might. Or vice versa, right? You know what I mean? Or she might not be, whatever the case is, right? And I mean, that's just that's that department. But I think that's like a growing pains of people. So that was the first one with two groups. 2 days. The next one was the same thing, but it was 3 months later, or 4 months later, and it was one day because I wanted to experiment. I want to see the difference between 2 days and 1 day. What I could accomplish? So I had like I wouldn't say a more mature bunch, but I had a more serious bunch. If that makes sense. And then that serious bunch, I was like trying to crack, and I'm like, and I could just say, I think that the point where I'm at, like in terms of freedom, is I can say whatever I want. Like I was telling these cucks, I was like, guys, you guys are so fucking boring compared to the first bunch. I'm like, the first bunch was like happy, energetic. I'm like, what is it going to take to get you guys happy? Yeah. Like, not in that direct way.
But that's like relatability, man. That's like someone knowing exactly. They're like, probably right then they let their shoulders down and started like.
Yeah. They were like, oh wow, somebody's talking to us like this. And I'm like, but dude, if nobody's going to talk to you like this, then. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm like, you paid me to come here, so I have to tell you what I see, right? So it's like kind of getting that like that push there, and then this third one is going to be a lot more like dialogue-y. It's going to be a lot more like I kind of came up with the thought process of this. It's like the first and the second ones when we were having dinner, we're all having this dinner, this long table, and people have their own conversations, and it was so loud, and it was like pulling teeth to get them out of this dinner setting into back in the thing, and I'm like, there was so much good energy there. And there was energy also when we were back there. But what happens is when you're in the event space, then everybody all tightens up, and then they're like, okay, shoot, here's the show. I want to watch a show, right? So this third one is going to be like, no, I'm going to make a circle, and we're all going to sit in circle, and we're all going to talk about stuff that's important to us, that we suck at, that we're good at, that we can help somebody, that we can take all our grudges down and just be like dudes, right? Whether or not you're a dude, or whether or not you're like in this, if you feel this way, and if you don't, that's cool. But if you do, you're going to love it. Yeah. Right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I do have a portion of international investing because, as I said, my brain is thinking. And again, it's all experiments, man. I don't know if what I'm doing is correct. But I'll get, if you have time, I'll get into it.
Yeah, I would love to on everything about it. On like, and just, your whole like. Yeah.
Sick, man. Sick. Like, I'm just gonna. One of my guys who just got this. Can we pause this for a second or no?
Yeah. Well, I'll just
record.
Like, do you have to call?
I'll try to do the bookend. No. Sorry, one second.
Oh no.
Are you there? Yeah. You can edit this part out, or you can just leave it on, or whatever.
Honestly, I probably will just leave it on.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to make this as fast as I can.
No, do your thing.
Okay. No, I can talk while I'm listening to this. So I have. This is the thing with roofers. So I've got 8 guys going to this job that I have in Welland. Okay. So in Niagara Falls. and I'm like, I can book it by Niagara Falls, but I'm not going to book it at Niagara Falls because then I don't know if everyone's going to, if a few of them are going to party and then not going to show up.
Like a hotel or something, like a room. Yeah.
And dude, I don't know about you, but have you checked for the cost of rooms nowadays? It used to be like $60, $70.
Not that long ago, and it's insane. It's wild. It's so
wild.
Not like how many 8 guys, how many?
Well,
people, I can get 4 people in a room.
No,
or like
no, I'm not that ghetto. No, because I'm trying to keep my guys. I'm not trying to keep everybody. So I basically have a couple of them share doubling up, but everybody else I'm getting together, right? You know what I mean? So I've got I've booked 5 rooms at the Ramada, which I'm like, oh, it's not I would say it's like number 3
like
tier.
$200 a night.
Yeah, $180 a night. I'm like $180 a night. I'm like, we're not even at Niagara Falls. We're like off the highway, you know. So
no, do what you gotta do. Honestly,
I'm just gonna call them up 1 second here, and then we'll get into this international investing. At least that's like one portion that I'm really like passionate about. You know what I mean? So, hopefully people are like, "Hey, Omar, are you there?" Good.
You can move that away if you don't want it to be like.
You got it? Everything's good?
That's funny.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Oh, the card. Yeah, because it left at 6 o'clock. So it left 2 hours ago. So you should be there in the next half an hour or so. Okay. Yeah, perfect. I will. Okay, bro. I'm just going to the meeting. I'll call you in about a couple hours. If that's okay. Thanks, man. Okay, bye. All right. Hopefully you're still there.
Hopefully
you're still there.
No, there's not that many people.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Dude, somebody might watch this 5 years from now, right? And say like, this jerk was on his phone while he was using a podcast,
like,
you know?
It's so, I say it so often, and it's so, I don't know, but it's Joe Rogan is like just the
do what you want.
Setup. It's like that's
chill.
all I want is like
just chill.
Now some of the best ones are like the ones you can't get anymore that are like way back when. But
I know. Well, you don't know what this world holds, right? Like I always think about this. Like there's a couple guys that I really follow. One of the things that I tell the guys in these mastermind things, I'm like, well, how many people do you follow, right? This is a really big thing to me.
Yeah.
Because like I just look at the number and I'm like, I can tell you, like, if I look at mine and I look at people that I wouldn't say respect, but I would say like people that I feel like that's the path that I want to go down.
Yeah.
In pieces of it, I'm like, never follow more than 100 people. Is my
cool. I thought you were going to say it the other way, because I've just been like, after the last little bit, I'm just trying to get my count down as low as possible.
Yes.
Filter out all the bullshit. Unless I can go to someone and see value and retain something from it. Like, I thought you were going to say just follow as many people as possible. I was like, oh, damn, I've been like unfollowing people like crazy.
Unfollow as many people as you can. It's the game, and it's for 2-part reasons, right? One is our mental headspace is like the most important thing in the world. But the second part of it is the algorithm doesn't respond to you if you look at so many people.
Yeah.
If you look at less people, they want you on the platform. So the only way to do it is to actually take those people and put it towards you. And if you follow less people, they're going to try more things to suck you on that platform by showing your stuff more. So to me, it's helped. It's definitely engagement for me has gone up when I've got rid of people, you know. And really, why do we get those people in the first place? I mean, like, you know, we were thinking something different. If we always evolve every year, then shouldn't the people we follow evolve?
For sure.
Right? That's kind of what, like...
Definitely.
I'm thinking so.
Total sense.
Okay, so let's roll to this international investing thing. So let's kind of start maybe a little bit.
What do you mean by
so I've just kind of termed this thing is just easier to talk about, but because I've been in the Canadian real estate space, and by Canadian I mean just simply Ontario, and I look at different markets, and when you're in a fishbowl, it's really difficult to see outside of this fishbowl, right?
Sure.
And like London, Ontario, as an example, they'll say, well, this is a quiet conservative town. Like these markets, these values will never go down because they've always gone up slowly. And I'm like, I don't know what newspaper you've been reading, but that was only cool till 2015. And then since then we've skyrocketed. Obviously COVID has really skyrocketed, but like everything's gone up like crazy, right? You know, I mean, like, dude, everybody knows that like a $150,000 house now is like, I mean, here's an example. I just sold a triplex that I paid $135,000 for in 2010. I just sold it for $720,000.
Crazy.
It's crazy, right? You know, so when you look at those metrics, I'm like, God, this is just not possible. And even if it is possible, I still want to take that risk to just not have the risk of being like, whoa, you had that opportunity, you didn't do it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to take some of the money, and I'm not like I'm taking money out of Canada because I don't like this country. Nope. I'm taking money out of this economy because I feel like this economy in the real estate game is just not as like as safe as it once was,
Sure,
right?
sure.
You know what I mean? Like nobody buying this at 720, even if the market changes moving forward with these rate changes, whatever, at 720, if somebody buys this thing for 650 next year, they're going to think, whoa, I just got a deal. I got $70,000 off last year's. I'm like, yo, last year's price is a rip.
Yeah.
So like this,
you're still in the red.
Yeah.
Like you should still look at yourself in the red.
Yeah, dude, I have a mortgage, and it's on my Scotia, because my Scotia was one of the first banks I never had. So it was one of the first properties I ever bought in 2000, and I think it was like 2007, like the duplex triplex thing, right? You know what I mean? So that it was the first like duplex I bought, my second duplex I bought, whatever. I paid $124,000 for it. My mortgage today in 2022 is 86 or 84,000. I did a 30-year finance on it, right? So you think like I paid 120, I put 15 points down at the time because 15 I couldn't get approved for anything better than that. But it's 86,000. It's not 25,000.
Yeah.
It's 86,000. So you're buying something for, let's call it 1.2 million, and you owe 800,000. Just add zeros on the end of it. You're like, whoa, this is still crazy. And this is 2007 or 2022. That's, who cares, 15 years or whatever.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna buy something for 720,000. When the hell is it ever going to be paid off?
Well, never. I think that's probably when the other people cards start scooping them up because no one can pay their mortgages anymore.
Yeah. Or are we on the path that like just the way these markets are going to be like this is just the way it is, and are we going to go through the way the Chinese do it? It's like forever game, generation mortgages, right?
Just pass it on and pass it on and pass it on.
Yeah. Or are we going to go through this crazy thing? But I think that so I was like, I looked at our systems here, and I mean, we are very lucky in terms of the land we live on, the structures we have, the people we have here, the friendships we have, the homes we have, the access to the product that we have in this country. It's all great. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I can take some money and I can put it in other places that either have more growth, a warmer climate in the winter. That is not the U.S. And my whole U.S. plan about it is that Florida is not warm in the winter. Anybody says, yeah, you go to Florida in like January all the month of January, no matter where you go to Tampa, you go to Miami, it's still cold at night. You're still wearing a sweater, right? You're not walking.
It's not like, probably these.
It's not like Central
countries.
America, man. Yeah, it's like Mexico. It's not like Mexico or whatever, right? So I was like, I cannot do it in the U.S. Plus, the U.S. has similar setups to we have here. So it's fine for somebody that has not been out, and there's a lot of them, has not been outside Canada, which sounds crazy, but there are Canadians that have not left Canada, right? So for those type of investors, the U.S. would work because it's a very easy thing. You can still do banking systems, all that stuff still work there, and there's still upside. But then again, I'm looking at that. I'm like, I was in like Fort Myers in 2008, and I'm like, wow, there's $30,000 houses here, $60,000 houses here. And now those houses are like $350,000, $400,000. And I'm like, okay, so that's the same nonsense. Let's go to places that are not as saturated. So I started going. So I went to Mexico first. Obviously, like we've all been to Mexico 1,000 times from like the Air Transat Sunwing vacation. So I was like, no. And I've done a couple of Airbnbs before. So I went to Tulum, which is it's obviously a spot, and it's been a spot for the last 5-7 years. But Tulum is obviously a really cool place. And I'm like, hey, I might buy a condo here. But it just was still a bit too like, how do I say? It's still too like not used. But I felt like the upside's already gone almost, right? So the buyers now are paying like almost top dollar. So then I was like, okay, next up is Costa Rica. So I went to Costa Rica, did the whole coast, did the whole Tamarindo all the way down, all the way to Santa Teresa, which is a lot of Canadians are buying.
So the whole time you're there, you're kind of like,
I'm always focused,
looking what.
Yeah. Because then it gives me, man, I don't know about you, but I'm so done with the all-inclusive thing, sitting in all-inclusive, just trying to be like, hey man, let's drink, let's have a good time. Yeah. And I mean, I like culture, I like going places, I like being a normal freaking human being, not some guy with like whatever, That's just not me, so I can't be something I'm not. So when I was in Mexico, I was like, yeah, it's all cool, but it's a real tourism push. It's like pushing tourism, like spend money. All the hipster shit is there. So you're like, okay, cool, I can enjoy this for a bit, but I cannot live it. You know what I mean? Unless I'm a hipster. Selling shit on the side of the road, right? You know what I mean? That's what I would do. And Costa Rica was similar, but obviously not as touristically down your throat. Really cool culture, really cool like terrain, right? You have beautiful waterfalls, all the way to beautiful beaches. And then all across the coast, there's a ton of Canadians that have left there COVID, right? Before one of the jobs came out, they were like, oh, let's bounce out of here. Let's go to Costa Rica and build. So there's a whole area, Nosara, Samara, and then like Santa Teresa. Guys are building like between like $800 to like $3 million homes, $4 million homes. So all Canadians, what they're doing in like Thornhill and stuff, they're building all in Costa Rica. So I was like, okay, well, I was like, I still got to see the rest of the world kind of to figure this out. And I felt like Costa Rica was already kind of going through this like uphill. Plus we're going through COVID. So everything's kind of accelerated. It's not, it might not be the real numbers. It might be accelerated or overvalued, whatever. But it's still kind of going uphill. And I wanted to buy something in Costa Rica, and I met really good contacts in one or two little cities, towns there that I still want to do something. I just haven't found the right thing because there's too much input, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wait until rainy season, so like July, August is when it's raining. You're like, okay, I'm gonna go there then because then there's less people there dying for the same product,
Get
right?
a little better
maybe
feel of it.
Yeah,
And like
yeah. But
truer number.
But
or
I made
whatever.
contacts,
Just,
right? I mean, so making contacts. So I made those contacts, and then the next one up was Panama. So I went to Panama, and Panama was really cool because Panama really got smashed, through COVID. Like they got destroyed because they have the port. Obviously, everybody's wearing masks at all times, all the time. Like they're masking at all times. There's no downtime to masking. There's a bit of downtime to masking here. Like you wear a mask, but then you're like, I can still leave my house and take my mask down. I'm not jogging them. Yeah. But there you're wearing masks. Inside, outside, doesn't matter, man. You're masking everywhere. Outside, just running.
Based on culture or based on what they were told to do?
It's such a tough conversation. Because, both. Okay, so I'll go back to Costa Rica for a second. When we went to the coast, where the tourism is really focused on, it's masking like crazy. Like where everybody's keeping everybody safe and all that stuff,
People drawing that decision to wear masks mainly from their...
Corporate. Corporate hotels would push that.
Okay.
All the corporate stuff would push that. And then, of course, because the corporate pushes it, the tourism board sees that and it's like, hey, well, all our touristic areas need to be masked up. So it's like mask. Yeah. But then, like, before these guys showed up, it was like, who gives a shit about
It's all rational thinking anyways.
Exactly. It's just a push, right? Whether you believe it or not, it's irrelevant. It's just really a push for that. So then Panama was all like thing. And because Panama is like banking state central, there's banks everywhere. There's huge buildings. Like obviously there's a big push 10, 15, 20 years ago to spend all this money to build these towers. So Panama is like Toronto. And then you have this old part, which is like old Montreal. So it's like old Panama City. It's like all like vintage and all like it was built in like the 1650s or whatever. So they're really gentrifying this area, and it used to be a big slum. So they're kicking all the slum out, and they're building all this stuff. They're investing money. So I went there. We were there so it was me and my son. My wife came back to London.
Cool.
It was me and my son. We just kind of went around. We went for 10 days there, and then 10 days the next spot. But so in those 10 days, I stayed in Airbnb. So my strategy at the time was to go and just visit Airbnb. So we stayed at a hotel for the first 4 days, and then the following 6 days I stayed at different Airbnbs to sort of vet the person that I was renting from, so I could just dig into their brain. This is a good rental, So I would try to specifically find problems with the spot and then basically ask them, hey, I found this, what do you think? Or like, I noticed this stuff there. Then it's how they reacted to me is how I would want to deal with them, right? Because if I was like, hey, that window doesn't work, they'd be like, well, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna get somebody to fix it next week. I'm like, okay, buddy, no one's fucking fixing this thing, Or if they're like, I'm gonna come right away and I'm gonna fix it, and then they're here, that's the person I want to do business with, right? Sure. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that path went.
So even that, are you like you're trying to gain information and feedback from that person, or you're looking for someone almost to like
exactly
work with
exactly. Like I will always try the feedback first, and then if feedback is like not so good, forget it. If feedback is really good and I can see a bit of we know in North America and in Canada we perceive to have a first world mentality, and they, in our minds, whether they're in Panama or whatever, even though they have skyscrapers, we think that they are third world for whatever reason, right? You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't feel that way, but from that perspective, they look at me like, hey, you're from Canada, you must have money. Yeah. Okay, so then they're either treating a certain way and they want to do business with you, and I come from a different perspective. So when I feel like there's some sort of clickability there, I guess, if that makes any sense.
No, totally, yeah.
Then I'm like, yo, let's roll. So I found this lady in Panama. She's like, yeah, I would love to help you. She's like, I've got 2 Airbnbs. I'm taking care of a third one. If you want to own one, then so I'm like, let's go buy one. So me and my son, we bought one. I looked at the prices and I was like, does this math kind of even work? So 2 big things about Panama. The first one is you can finance, which is a huge thing. As a foreigner, you can't finance anywhere in the world for the most part, especially in near North America, South America. I mean, Europe is too far, to be honest. And Europe with open borders and the way what's happening in the last 3 years in Europe, I forget Europe. As beautiful as it is, and we have family there, but not interested. And then Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Bali, all that stuff's too far
for North America
to invest money and to go
you
travel.
Where you're located.
For us to go, right? For us to go,
Do you think of when you think of like Panama and stuff like that? Are you thinking is kind of people coming from North America irrelevant? And like who's
my target market?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a learning process, but I think the target market, I used to always think like Costa Rica was a really big eye opener for me for that. Not Mexico at all. Mexico is just a waste of time in my opinion. People that buy in Mexico are just basically don't want to buy in Florida. We want the closest thing. Mexico's the thing for you. But Costa Rica is really big because Costa Rica showed me that when COVID hit and all the foreign money stopped, the people from the city that had money just went to the coast.
Cool.
So those people were like, hey, those are the customers now. So an example for that would be like those people those locals the Costa Ricans have big families. They all have 3, 4, 6 people, auntie, uncle, all this stuff come. Whereas us Canadians, we're like, yo, no, we're like 2 of us and 1 kid, right? Yeah. So we're thinking 1 bedrooms. They're thinking 3 bedrooms. So then I have all these developers in Costa Rica building 3 bedrooms, big homes. And now guess what? All these guys are going to have to put back to work because of COVID. Now you're stuck with these foreigners again, like me, trying to buy 1 bedrooms. So now they have this like really short demand, or it's really high demand, not enough supply of these 1 bedrooms and a shit ton of 3 bedrooms.
Interesting. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, there's deals in 3 bedrooms, and you buy a 3 bedroom, nobody wants to rent it because a lot of singles are coming. All the nomads with the computers, right? You know what I mean? That whole push, right?
For sure.
So you have all that stuff. So Panama was a cool thing. So the first one is you can finance. But they have this really weird rule though. So I have a fairly decent sized line of credit, and it's unused, but because it's there, they charge you 3% of the monthly payment on the max number on that on regular rates.
Irrelevant of how much you're using. Relevant,
yeah. So that threw my debt ratio like totally out of whack. Yeah. And so I didn't get approved. And I was like, I don't get approved. Like, and in Canada, you don't want to skyrocket your real income, right? And you just leave it on the companies, right? You know what I mean? You're not like personal. Give me all the personal money I can. Totally. Pay the government all the money. No, you're like, yo, Corp can keep that,
I don't
and
need
we'll just
right
take
now.
as little as we need. To a
definitely.
certain degree, right? So that's the problem. So I didn't get approved, which is like sweet. So this condo happened to be $120,000 US plus some fees. So basically 155 Canadian. Let's call 160 Canadian for a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, about 600 square feet, brand new, not lived in, which is like, and dude, I can't even tell you how slow they are to like want to sell me this thing. I have to contact them, and be like, hey, I'm ready to go, and I'm like, hey, so I'm following. It's like it's reversed.
Is that just their lifestyle, or like business action?
I think there's something there. I think there's some of that there. Also, there's not a lot of money there. I'm assuming like how much money they're making off 120 grand US. Not a lot, right? You know what I mean? But the place is new and it's awesome. So it's in this just about this what I would say slum area to the whole touristic area. We're just like on the outskirts. I'm like 1 block shy of it. So I'm looking like 10 years from now, this might be something. So the problem is, from a Canadian standpoint, it's hard for investors to be like, hey, yeah, I want to invest in that. And I'm like, okay, because they're like, well, if I'm putting 100 grand, what am I going to get back this year? That's just the way it is, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm like, you're not my person for me, man. Like, first of all, I don't.
You can go stay down there if you want.
Yeah, I'm like, you can rent from me if you want. You can stay down there. So for me, I'm cool with. For my purpose is, I don't care what it makes. My purpose is to just take some money out of here and put it there, in case this does change. And also, I've been doing this for so long. I just want to change, right? I want to change. I want something in the winter to keep me busy. So here we go. Move that there. So Panama. So you can think. And the second thing, which is the biggest thing, I think, is you get 30 years in this area that I bought. It's called HQCo. So you can write that down. You get 30 years, no taxes. You don't pay taxes for 30 years. The taxes aren't high. They're like $2 grand a year, but you don't pay them for 30 years. 30 fucking years.
So man. What's that? What's the incentive to have people bring their money there?
So this area is a UNESCO heritage site.
Oh, so it's specifically in that area?
It's only in that area.
Cool.
So because it's a heritage site, they want to promote movement. They're giving you 30 years no tax. You don't pay taxes. 30 years, dude. It's crazy. And the maintenance fee on this place is $100 a month. And it's not like $100 a month like Toronto style. It'd be like $100 a month the first year, second year $500 a month, third year $700 a month. It's not like that. There's no swimming pool. It's a heritage district. It's all walkable. It's a pure apartment. It's just you open the door and then voila, there it is. There's no amenities, nothing. So just an elevator. Yeah. So that was Panama, and Panama is cool because like, the city is dead. Like, it's besides the locals, there's no tourists, there's no ships coming in, but the infrastructure is there. So the government has spent the money to build the space and build the country, or build the city by all means, build the city. So they spent that dollar amount on that. So I'm like, yo, this is like cheap. Everything's US dollars, right? So you're like converting Canadian to US, whatever. Yeah. But it's also where it's located. It doesn't have it has a good airport in terms of physical, but it doesn't have the perfect like flight schedule from Toronto, right? Sure. It's always about like, how do you fly from Toronto there? Because the Canadians will always say like, I went through this process about 5 years ago to buy a place in Turks and Caicos. And one of the biggest things about Turks is that like, you can fly there in 3 hours, right? Yeah. You can get warm 3 hours, and there's obviously hurricane problems. So that's why I didn't invest in the islands. But fast forward to now, is Panama's good because it's like, when you look at it on a map, it's like Costa Rica's up there, Colombia's down there. Yeah. Which leads me to my next topic, and that's Colombia. Yeah. So then the next part of the trip, so I bought this 2-bedroom, 1 bath in Panama. Yeah. Then the next thing in Colombia is I went to Medellin. So I've been to Cartagena before, and then Bogota was really city-like, and it was just too much. It was way too busy for me. I didn't like it. Medellin has less people, and I just felt like there's more vibrance there. It was more like Buenos Aires, which is in Argentina. Argentina is very like, anybody who's been to Argentina will tell you that it's very like very vibrant, very European, a lot of flair. Everybody dresses well. They care about themselves. no garage clothing, you know, like, you know, you have like people that actually look good, right? You know what I mean? Like in Buenos Aires, and then in Colombia, it's the same way. They care about themselves. They care, they care about their appearance, right? You know what I mean? And it's just really pride, and they might not have a lot of money, but they're always looking good, right? You know what I mean? So, and Colombia, and so it was like an eye opener, and also like Mike at 40, which I am now, is a different Mike at 30 if I went to the same places, right? We want different things.
For sure.
Right?
That's kind of what I was going to say is like, how much is this based? Is it based on your personal impressions and opinions versus like, you know, the metrics behind it all too?
Yeah. I mean, see, Mike at 30 never thought of this like Mike at 40. Mike at 40 now is thinking about like preservation of wealth, but also like don't want to lose the money. So you're like, okay, where do I put it? And the more places I put it, the safer it is besides the stock market, because I feel like stock market, something happens, everything's fucked anyways. It doesn't matter unless you're totally shorting, then maybe, you know, but that's like luck and timing and all that stuff, right? You know what I mean? A whole nother then guess what? You're sitting in the computer, depressed as hell, smoking, trying to figure out if you just
wait another 10 years.
And you're like depressed because you didn't nail it and all that stuff, you know? But I feel like, okay, I know real estate. I know that my life now depends on like going around and showing everybody what I do. And because of that, it kind of flows, right? You know, so if I can go to these places and show people what I see, then maybe they can see what I see through my eyes and understand like, hey, there's something here. He sees something, and like, I don't give a shit about making money, man.
No, but it's all your own tunnel of
thought, right? You know what I mean? Like, look at the world through what I see with this lens, and if that makes a difference to your life, then I win.
Yes.
And if like, hey man, if like there's support there, like a lot of people will support my roofing business because of the gifts I give them from this side.
Sure.
Which is like crazy, right? You know what I mean? So like,
but it's how the world goes around. I mean, that's why you probably do just build such a good community of like people that, you know.
And dude, people use me for roofing because they're like, God, this guy's never going to screw me over.
Yeah.
People will go, there are companies that are like more recognized and like might have a better like certification or something, but they don't give a shit about them.
I need a roofing guy for here. So,
Look at it.
So we need to do I'll show you after. We need to cut into the membrane possibly, so we'll need that sealed back up once we do our door here. But
it's all good, man. We're gonna have a patio outside.
Yeah, we will soon. Next time you come back, when you do come back, we'll have it outside.
Well, the weather's hopefully changing. That's the key.
I know.
But yeah, so Colombia, so Medellin was cool because Medellin is very like, if you haven't been to Medellin, have you?
No, I haven't. I gotta go. I gotta get some of these.
You gotta speak Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but you gotta like Google Translate. You're like, and then like
the wrong one.
Yeah. So like, it's a lot of this, right? You know. So what I found with Colombia is this, and the first thing that made it change for me, and it's always like there's that point, right? You know, it was very difficult to make a decision to buy a property or a condo in Toronto, let's say, right? And you're just like, no, I want to be in like Cabbagetown, or I want to be in, you know, off the Danforth, whatever you want to be. It's very easy to pick a spot. But in a big city that you don't know, you're like, oh, I think like all the tourists go to this place called Poblado, right? So you're like, all the tourists go there. I also want to buy there. And it's like, for what? Just to rent it out? You could just rent it yourself, right? You know what I mean? There's no real thing to rent it out. And it's not as cheap as people think. Obviously there's no more like the narcos and all that stuff's done. So you got this like rebuilding, which has been happening for the last 25 years of Medellin. So you have this really good space. It's beautiful, you know, and the infrastructure is really good. The people are really nice. They've got awesome soccer games. They've got anything you want to eat. It's like you have the poverty level where you have people that want to work. Like one of the problems I find with the Canadian poverty, so to speak, is that we fund them. Like people don't work, right? You know what I mean? The only time they're working is if they're getting money from the government, cash from the government, and then they're working on the side to get cash, right? So they're like double dipping, and then they're cheating the government, they're cheating us, right? You know? I feel like, and then if they can't, then there's other ways that they can get free money. Like if people couldn't pay rent, they'd just go to like Salvation Army, or they'd go to like wherever, and they'd get money, and they'd be like, here you go, Mike, you know, and they'd pay me when I had some of my duplex triplexes. Well, there's no choice, man. You got to work, right? So that like working at all levels is just beautiful to see, right?
It makes total sense.
Yes, the economic piece is, and the other thing is that they don't leverage. So they're not leveraging
shit they don't have,
or shit that they want to buy, right? They're like, let's get this fucking furniture from China for a fucking $1,500, and then charges the fucker for $6,000. They don't have that shit. They might have it, and they charge crazy interest rates, but they'll have to collateralize it in some way, right? So the financial system, as crazy as it is, we have problems here sending money there because we think there is dangerous. Except, I think it's the other way around.
Sure, I mean, it does make sense, especially when you break it down to the honesty of like. Worth ethic and everything else. So I look at those math, and then the part that made me go over to push from investing there was, besides one of my partners in the roofing company, the guy I told you about earlier,
He's Colombian. So besides having him, even though he's like an hour and a half away, is the exchange rate. So the rate is a big one because it used to be, if you looked 4 years ago, it used to be 1 Canadian dollar was 2,000 pesos.
Okay.
Now 1 Canadian dollar is almost 3,000 pesos. So we've basically got a 50% bump in our currency.
Yeah.
Their values have gone up. Our values have shot up. So when you look at those differences, I thought, man, this is a place that I want to put my money in. So I bought 5.5 acres in this place called Guatape, which is where all like Live Nation and all these companies are hedging themselves against COVID, which I don't know if we're going to have another 7th episode of COVID or whatever, but they're buying land there. So then I was like, these guys are buying land there. I'm going to buy land there because, you know, there's something there. Like these guys are not stupid, right? You know, and I haven't been here long enough to know, like in Colombia, because I was there for 10 days. So anyways, I bought 5.5 acres, but I've gone through this process of going through like all the paperwork, the lawyers, the power of attorneys, you know, all the signatures and like how to transfer money. You can't just transfer money from bank to bank. You got to find basically like a brokerage that does like stocks and bonds and stuff like that. So you got to transfer money from the Canadian side in US dollars to this brokerage, and this brokerage will transfer it to the end party. Because if you transfer directly, there's no what's the word I'm looking, fiduciaries, maybe that's the right terminology or whatever. There's no like oversight on this money, right? Because they wonder where the money come from. They're like, so I had like a 2-hour interview to find out where this money coming from, how this whole thing, and that's the good thing about social media. You can put your stuff out there, then all of a sudden you created who you are on social media. Totally. So they were like, yeah, I saw you on this is blah blah. And then like the hour was basically talking about like Colombian politics and like how infrastructure is there. That's how our conversation was with the person at the bank to make sure that I was legit. Yeah, that's how the conversation went. So, but when I saw that like dollar exchange or that Canadian dollar to Colombian, I was like, man, this is an opportunity. So I bought in this place called Guatape, which is basically a Muskoka or a lake town. The first body of water from Medellin is this Guatape place, and it has this huge rock that has 720 steps to climb. So it's like a real touristic
landmark type thing.
Exactly. And when I watch all the YouTube videos on like things to do in Medellin, this rock always came up.
Cool.
And I'm like, there we
go. Yeah.
So like I've got some. So I'm going there. I'm going there in 2 weeks again. I'm taking my mom and dad, and that's one of the things like. That's I was saying this mastermind thing I'm doing is it hasn't happened yet, so it's like a whole like experiment. But I'm basically putting chairs all in a big circle, and I want people to be like honest about like where they're at in their lives, how they can improve. But also like one of the things that I have lots to say when it comes to that stuff. But I think like I'm taking my mom and dad on the 15th of this month, because I think what we do with our parents is that we're like oh yeah, you know, like we're all brainwashed to like work till the 60th. And they say this all the time, so cliche, but our parents are in this mindset of like, yeah, I got to work when the time is right, and your dad's at a good age, then we'll go travel. I'm like, that's bullshit, you know, like it's not going to work, right? So I'm like, now I'm like, I have this opportunity. So I'm like, I told my parents like 3 weeks ago, I'm like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, and I'm like, we're leaving. And I told them like last week, I'm like, we're leaving in a month. We're going there for 2 weeks. My mom was like, well, no, I got to tell them. And I'm like, no, we're going, man.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm like, you know, so that's like, and a lot of people will say, yeah, like my dream is to take my parents. Well, then guess what? When you make this money and you do okay, guess what? You don't think about your parents. You think about yourself. You think about buying this fancy car. And it's just like human nature, right? And some people just forget about those things.
I couldn't
agree
more, man. That's like one thing that's always like, just when you saying that, it's like, I can't wait to just like take my parents somewhere and just like, you know, do something like that. But
there's always that, I don't really have a conflict, but I think there's a lot of dudes that I know that have that, and then have, especially when they're married and have kids, that's like, that becomes their first responsibility. And just like when you have like a child that's like 15, their responsibility or their focus is their friends. And then when you as an adult, your focus is your wife and your children, and your parents take a second place, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm always like, I'm always like trying to keep them at the same level.
For sure.
That way, like, you know, you still respect what they did for you when you grew up, but at the same time, they're still your parents, right? Definitely, you know what I mean? And your wife is still your wife, and your kid is still your kid. But I'm like, I have so much more life to live with you guys. I'm like, I don't know how much life I have to live with them anymore, right? As much, right?
Side note, did your parents come, did you all move to Canada?
No, so from Dubai. No, I came at 17 by myself. Okay. Like I moved. In Dubai it was a very racist country in the sense that like all the workers were done by like Indians, Pakistanis, and Bangladeshi, because it was cheap labor. Yeah. So all the Arabs would just bring them, take their passports, and put them in camps, and then build these freaking crazy towers. It's all free labor, basically, right? You know, or nothing, labor. So when I used to go to places with my mom, because she was brown, I would be treated differently when I went with my dad, who was white. So when I went to restaurants or like even the grocery store in Dubai, because we lived in a decent area.
Well, you were old enough too to like know it's not like you were I was 10-year-old or something like that.
No,
like you were
dude, I would teenager. Remember at 10. No, I left when 17, but like all the way from 10 all the way to like, you start understanding with like 14, 15 when like people start talking to you a certain way, right? Even though I went to a very good school, but society treats you a certain way, right? You know, like
Have you been back? I know I keep
Yeah. No. 2015 or 2005 is when Dubai allowed people to invest to buy property. And then before that, you had to rent. Everybody was there would rent from the locals. That's all it was.
Okay.
2005, the government said, we're opening our doors. You can invest in real estate. So then all these towers went up and went crazy, right? That's when Dubai were like totally overhauled.
Sure.
So I went back in 2011, which is 2012. Sorry, when my son was born in 2011. And yeah, it was like crazy, but I still had a lot of friends then.
Did you go back with investment mind
No,
frame?
no.
This is just a visit and stuff
yeah,
like that?
this investment game, man, only came up. This is a really interesting question because the investment game, like all Canadians, is like, hey, man, I want to buy property. Just exactly what we said right in the beginning, right? Yeah. You're like, I want to buy property so that I have something I have something for my children when they get old, or when I get older, I have a property as a retirement thing. Yeah. But that game is unfortunately a lie right now, in my opinion. So it's obviously like questionable for people. This is my opinion. Like I can hurt people's feelings by saying this shit, right? But it's true. Like I think that like the way the Canadian real estate game has gone, it's totally oversaturated. It's oversold. We're in a real risk portion where government is really going to obviously dictate what it's like. Obviously they're trying to have a soft landing on that stuff, but when things are so expensive and the numbers don't work, the only way to win, like people are doing right now, is to appraise it and then refinance it. That's the only way. Would you have
said the same thing pre-COVID? Like, would you have been?
Like, I've been selling. I've been selling property since 2015. One, because I was fed up of being broke all the time. Like when you're buying property, you're always broke, right? Yeah. It's always broke game. So I wanted to get some money, so I felt like I had something, you know.
Sure.
But I think COVID has definitely obviously accelerated. So my hope is that it goes down to pre-COVID numbers, which I think it should. I know that we've got some push, like WSIB's coming to London. I know we got these immigration numbers, but I mean, like, I hate to break it to people, but we've had immigration in this country since I moved here in 2017. Mm-hmm. We have 400,000 a year, or between 300 and 500. Summer fluctuates around there for the last 20 years in this country. And we've just really started building or complaining about building in the last 4.
Yeah.
Right? Just like the hospitals, like they're saying, like, we're at capacity. I'm like, dude, like we've had problems with hospitals the last 15 years in this country, at least 10, right? Mm-hmm. So you have all this stuff. You're like, oh, I don't really buy this bullshit, you know? And also, like, I'm just looking at what people can afford, and a lot of people taking private money, and a lot of guys have so much money. Like, there's so much money in this country right now that it's not the same country that it was 5 years ago with less money. That's why nothing's worth as much anymore, right? Sure. That's why things are so much more expensive. So in your mind, yeah, I guess they kind of somewhat do average out. But when you think, like, I just look at what a labor would cost. So labor would cost on a normal general labor perspective, you would be able to get away with $11.50 to $13.50 an hour. Today you can get away with $18.50 to $21.50 an hour. Yeah, that's a 70% increase. Nothing has gone up as low as 70%. Yeah, everything's gone up by 200%. Mm-hmm. So we are flowing in money. Yeah, obviously, like, the wealth has moved, but if we're flowing with all this money, where is it either going? And where we can afford less. So the pressure to get a retirement is even heavier. But then you're buying something that's overinflated.
So where is it going? Just in people's pockets?
Well, like, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's a hard one, man, but there's a lot of people.
Or elsewhere. Do you think a lot of people are going international more now than ever?
I don't think that's a big one. I think there's a lot of overspending, and I also think that people are faking it for a while and still are faking how much money they have. I think that's a big one. There's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, a lot of societal pressures to buy shit. You know, that's the problem. But I think, man, real estate's a really hard one. People ask me, you know, and I think that, so I put one of my buildings up for sale now at a crazy number. And I thought, if I get it, great. If I don't get it, I'll just keep it in cash flow. It makes money anyways. But, but it's gone up. I bought it in 2014. I've spent some money on it. I've put it for sale for almost 5 times more than I paid for it, which is a crazy number. But then I've got 6 times more than the building I just sold. So I'm like, okay, it's got to be like 5. Maybe that works, you know? If something can go for 5 times, that's supposed to be a stable investment. How can somebody call it a stable investment anymore?
Totally.
You can't, right?
It's like you can't expect it to keep going up like that, let alone or anything, I guess. Like,
and
you got to be real with it.
You are, and I mean, like, the only thing the government can do is either stretch the terms, drop the rates, which they can only do for so long before the country goes bankrupt, or like you know, or make it easier, or like COVID happened, they'd say, hey, don't worry, you don't have to pay for the next 6 months. We'll just add those 6 months to the end, you know? So you have all these financial issues. So when people are like, when people fall for the story of like, hey, I got to buy my first rental property because like that's what I'm told to save money for my family. But I'm like, yo, how about you change that up and buy it when the market's totally changed, if they do. And in that meantime, how about spend money on either yourself, spend money on a business that you think is profitable, spend money on your wife or husband that is like profitable as well. Invest in those things that are guarantees. A real estate product is not a guarantee unless you can steal a product from somebody, buy a house or buy an apartment building or whatever that's cheap enough where you got it under market value, and not even just buy it, but buy it, clean it up, refinance it, pull the money out from the bank so the bank holds the paper, and then you're less at risk. Because when this whole party goes down, I know there's a lot of talk that insured mortgages have changed. So insured mortgages, I don't know if you know the way it works. Yeah. So CMHC is basically a government product that's backed by the taxpayers. Yeah. So if this fucking shit goes down, they're paying that. I know people said like we have a less risk in CMHC because values have gone up, so it's less numbers. But I don't buy all that.
Someone's gonna have to,
Someone's paying this bill when the shit hits the fan. You know,
it's highly unlikely.
Exactly. And us Canadians are all like you, bro. Smiley as hell. Not gonna fucking be like, fuck you, we're coming after you. Like we're not gonna revolt, right? You know, we're all just like added to the zero.
Yeah.
So you have all these guys that are refinancing all these things. The appraisers don't care because they're all getting paid. And the way residential works and has always worked is like if you want to refinance your house, you could just say, hey, okay, well I put new flooring and I put new drywall, pot lights, whatever bullshit, right? And then just get an appraiser in here and he'll be like, okay, 600. And then you're like, well, that wasn't what I was expecting because Buddy sold for 750 and other Buddy sold for 825 and I'm only 600. Then you call your mortgage guy and say, look, man, this last appraiser was terrible. He's like, okay, I'll send somebody else. The next guy rolls through the door and he's like, oh, this is a beautiful house. You're like, yeah, fucking pot lights, fucking new vanity. Oh yeah, a max shower, a fucking corner shower. And then he's like, yeah, this is worth 750. You're like, yeah, that sounds about right. But I think Buddy sold for 758. He's like, okay, I think this thing's worth 745. Okay, perfect. Or 755, whatever number it is. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, man. It's bullshit. It's a $350 bill that you get for a number. That the number says, the bank's like, we sent a professional guy.
Here's your $300K or whatever you want.
Here's your bump.
The last one.
So then you're like, sweet, clean up. So the problem with me is that I made a mistake all these years. Is I was like, I do not want to take a lot of debt. It's the whole conversation when you start this business, this real estate business, and you're like, okay, I've got $100,000 at the time. I got $100,000 or $1 million, let's call it today. I got $1 million and I want to buy one real estate property and I want to pay it off. Or I'm like, no, I want to buy 10 of them because I can put 10% down. That's an example, right? Which path do you want to take? This is the path that I'm growing. This is the path that I feel safe. So in the last 5 years or 6 years, I've been taking this path.
Paying as much as you can down.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't have a lot of debt. Sure. I'm like equity heavy. And then I'm like, then all of a sudden, because I'm like in the game all the time, last 3 years, I'm seeing all these guys coming up and I see all these appraisers writing all these crazy numbers. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm the dummy. Because when the shit falls, I just lost all this equity. These guys, they don't lose shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I got to sell some crap.
Yeah.
This is why I say it's so dangerous because you're talking to a guy that has equity, that's built this business over the last 17 years. And I'm like, I got a clean house. So I've been cleaning the house as much as I can, putting that shit, the Roomba on overtime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, dude. I don't know where the market's going to go. So that's why that international investing is really important to me because I feel like now I can actually buy something in other countries for cheaper. With our money here, I can put it there.
That
I can
solves
grow this.
that long-term kind of investment.
It hedges it, right? It hedges it, and it gives me a spot that's different. And it gives me a spot that I can say, I took the chance, man. Because for me, it's not even about where the money goes, all that stuff. It doesn't matter because I have very low, like I'm not a big guy when it comes to spending money on I don't give a shit about $3,000 shoes. These Nikes, all these kids are buying for $700-800, fucking $3,000. They can spend their money on that. I don't give a shit about that. I care about wearing the same fucking merch that I promote my own brand. Yeah. When you get a certain age, you don't care, right? You know what I mean? So for me, it's about having this I don't want to regret saying man, the markets are so high. I had this equity. I didn't pull it out. I didn't go invest here or at least it's not even investing because what I want to build there is it's 5.5 acres. My plan is to put 8 sick Airbnbs up there, cool chalets that overlook this big rock and then 3 houses down there. I'm going to have a helicopter pad. So it's going to be sick, right? Cool, you know what I mean? Cool. Not for a helicopter for myself, but as an Instagram.
Someone wants to.
Or an Instagram pop.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? You know
whatever it is.
Whatever it is. So I'm I want to be creative, and those countries don't have restrictions like we have in Canada. I cannot, dude, in this place, if you want to put another story here or you want to put them.
Yeah. I know. Trust me, I know. I've tried it.
You want to hang a painting up, they're going to fucking one day come tell you can't, right? Because it's heritage brick. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is, there's a big, I passed on the building next door. There's a little small one because it was
heritage.
It's railroad So it's contamination. So that's like, you know,
no financing.
If it no, God no, it burns down. It's
done.
Sell the lot for $50K, and you're to the
for
me
2 park,
here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like lost, and it's like, fuck, that's a huge opportunity for me. But like that was just happened in the last couple, I guess, years now. But yeah, and it's like, it's
not worth it, right? It's not worth it. So. Yeah, man, I think it's like regrets are the big thing, you know, and so that's why we'll see how this goes. It's just an experiment, man.
I got a question. You know? So when you go, probably not so much your like student rentals and stuff when you started out, but when you're buying these stuff international, is it more a place for you? Like, are you worrying about?
Yes.
This is a long-term play. You're not worrying about filling that place all the time.
No. Yes. So that's the other part of it. It's, you know.
Is that a different avenue?
Yeah, because look, this is the best the way to put it. Look, I want to buy a place. So if I was saying like, look, I have $500,000 as an example. Okay, sure. I want to buy a party place. And I want a place that's going to be fun forever, and I want the best spot ever. Buy a place in Tulum. There's no doubt. Tulum is awesome. It's got like all the hipster shit. You got all the food you want to a certain degree. You got the beach. You got all the parties on the beach. You can run on the beach every day in the morning. You can lose weight.
You're covering that basically all yourself. You're not. That's a long-term play, so that. You have that
no
long-term investment, but even like, I mean, yourself in terms of like you're not renters in there and stuff like that,
no,
or like stuff like
so that that's why like I think the path is different. Like the path is like I was kind of saying earlier about like the investors. Like an investor, I'm not catering when I'm doing this stuff not to an investor, because an investor is going to want to say how much money am I making off this. So I can say, hey, I bought a place in Tulum. It's sick. You know, it'll get rented for sure at least 6 months of the year or 8 months of the year for this much money. We're going to put $500K. You're going to get $35,000 a year out of it. Okay, so let's
you
call
don't care about that.
I don't give a shit about that.
You're let's get it. I'll go down there if someone I want to.
Yeah, like so. What I'm thinking is like I want to do construction in a different country that is not as populated as other countries that are so tight and tougher and like saturated and all that stuff. I want to go to a place that isn't as busy. I want to try it. So my goal, so like the end goal of this thing, I can't afford it myself, but which I'm going to hopefully bring on 1 or 2 or 3 people. It depends how big this thing becomes. But is I want to have between 5 and maybe 7 spots that are done along South America. So let's go from like Nicaragua. Honduras is a little bit tricky, but I would say like Nicaragua, El Salvador, and then if you go down the coast, so Costa Rica, then Panama, which I already have, Colombia, which I have, and then maybe Brazil, potentially Argentina and Peru. So if I have those 7 or 8 joins, then it becomes serious, and it becomes like, hey, like, and one of the main reasons I want to do this, besides like my dream of like, hey, I want to have an international place, because in my mind, growing up, I was like, I'm gonna have a place in Paris where I got married. I'm gonna have a place in Dubai because that's where I grew up. I have a place in Australia. I have a place in Bangkok because Bangkok is like just a spot, you know. And then like in the U.S. and South America, that was my thing. But COVID's really changed shit up. Wars have changed shit up. Mm-hmm. Also distances have changed shit up. And then like, you know, like there's just too much going on. So I figured like South America is a thing. South America is just also not as, it's politically unstable. That's the first problem, right? You know, but so are we, and so are the U.S.
Sure.
So it's politically
now
fucked,
more than ever,
right? Exactly. So if like we're going that direction, like what's the difference? You know?
Definitely.
And people think that North America were first world and South America is third world. I'm like, I don't know what fucking world you live on.
I'm not a huge traveler, but I feel like as soon as you travel, you start to see that it's not that. It's like these people are just like,
no, they're just like us. They just don't have maybe a leverage system or the right systems in place, you know? And I don't know, dude. Who knows? Like Colombia's going through this place now where they're going to have a new, they're going through a new presidency or whatever. And there's 2 different dudes. One's really left and one's like kind of center. And this left guy could come in and say, hey, you know what? We don't want any foreign investment. We're going to shut this down. You know, they can't own land. You never know. Mm-hmm. Who knows, right? Mm-hmm. But dude, if I lived my life worrying about
it, the same shit happens in Canada though, right? Like we're getting told, like for just as obscure things, and unpredictability is what. So you'd be naive to think that like we're in a bubble here, and it's all like.
And people tell me and people ask me like, how's the like the stuff of like getting stuff done there, and people there tell me, we know your kind. You guys like shit done right away. We are slow. We take life. We care about our lives here. We like to enjoy ourselves. This is what they tell me. They're like, slow down. This is the best part. They're no slower than here, because here we're all like, we're hurrying, and then like red tape shows up, and we're like, okay, it'll be 6 to fucking 9 weeks until your permit get looked at.
It's all relative.
9 weeks, they're like, okay, well, you know what? There's extra fees here. ESA comes in like, well, yeah, you know what? You can get your inspection, and then there's like a whole bunch of fees here because we found one deficiency, and that one deficiency has to be corrected. And they come in, they look at that, they have another deficiency. So you're like red tape to death. So you're like, I'd rather go to a place that's less red tape, that's slower.
It just takes as long, or takes longer. Yeah,
oh yeah, whatever.
Or not takes the same amount of time, but less obstacles. Yeah,
exactly. So you just look at those two paths and you see like, okay, there it is. But to kind of go back to your question of like, am I doing it for myself or somebody else? Right now, because I got the means to, I'm totally doing this for myself. I'm totally willing to like angel invest on myself.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I mean?
basically,
right?
and that's a huge thing too. But that gives a light to like the different oversights of international investing. Like you're not, or investing in general.
Yeah, investing in general. Yeah,
but like
exactly.
It's not like you're okay. Now I gotta find someone down there, or even yourself. Yes. Like none of these places, I'm sure maybe are listed on Airbnb. Like maybe there's a couple
silly
like, not to type of thing.
Yeah. Like I'm going to rent like this project that I'm going to build. I'm definitely renting parts of it out. There's no doubt.
Well, you don't need it. It sounds like that's the
that stuff. This Panama one, I don't think I'm going to rent out as much. But here's the problem, man. If you have a place in Florida, the time you're getting peak rentals is the time you need it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I want to go January, February, March. That's what pays the most. It's not paying the most in August. No. You know what I mean? So those are peak angles. So that's the problem, is that you have to figure out like, if I'm going to buy something and I want to rent it and make most money, well, it's getting most money when I want to use it.
So if I can rent one of yours off you,
where
would you, if I was to like say, hey, I want to go to one of these in the next 6 months.
No, I have nothing in the 6 months. No? I just have Panama. At that stage, like, so I will go to places when even if I have a spot there, I will rent. I will rent somewhere else as competition, right? I mean, just to kind of test out.
For sure.
Because you're like, I got my own place. I don't need to live here. I comments tell me, and my person that's in charge,
what's your favorite of all the places all the like just genuine
in the
atmosphere
world?
And like visiting, if you're like, you got to go tomorrow with your wife somewhere, where are you going?
That question can be answered the same way a question of like, what's your favorite car? And I'll tell you this way. My favorite car is actually 4 cars. Yeah. So my favorite place in the world is 4 places. Sure. Right? Yeah, that's an example, right? Yeah. So like for surfing, it's Costa Rica as an example. For like atmosphere, lifestyle, you could obviously like, you could throw Vegas in there as an example, right? You can have a shit ton of fun in Vegas, right? Sure. 3 days with your buddies, 3 days with, friends and shit. It'll be like hella fun, right? And if you're into skiing, there's different angles. So I think the world as a general is so good in so many ways that you want to go to so many places. But in Canada, it's tough because you're like, you've only got 3 weeks or 4 weeks vacation a year. If you're lucky, most people have 2 weeks. What the fuck are you going in 2 weeks, man? You're going nowhere. Yeah. You're going all inclusive.
You're going all inclusive.
Because you're like, I just show up, sit on the plane, I show up, I have drinks, and I get smashed, and then get back to work. Yeah. Right. So that's the problem. But yeah, I think each place has their own like light. What I mean? Light.
What are cars then?
I'm so jaded, man. I'm so jaded. I'm like totally jaded. Like I don't.
In terms
your wife's name's Jade, isn't she?
Yeah,
Jade.
That's so funny. So in terms of like what you think people would think, you're like, no, I don't like it. Like,
I like shit cars. Yeah, I like cars that need working to actually engage. Like I like engagement stuff, like a Lamborghini SVJ, which is like $1 million today, do nothing for me. A Bugatti Veyron does nothing for me. Anything really expensive doesn't do much.
Yeah. No. Did it at one point?
It did. So for example, like the R8, like Nick's car, like that was my old car and that car I loved. I got out of bed. I just loved it. It was engaging. It was a really good daily driver.
Like that one right now, like one big thing for me would be to like, have that.
A toy,
a toy.
So it's nice to have the toy. We're all humans, man. We get bored of stuff, and I'm a really very easy boardable guy. If that makes sense, no English, but So the R8 was cool because it did a really good job being like a quasi supercar. It was good. It was like you could beat on it if you want to. It would never fight back. It was like just a very easy car to drive. It gave you the convertible. It gave you all that, all the nice good pieces.
Have to
ask him.
Find it off Nick.
Man. She's like, Nick, man, can I use the car? It's got a really long warranty on it. He knows, so like you could beat it. I got the longest warranty I possibly could when I bought it. But I think that, man, I think every car has like getting into a new Escalade right now is like sick. It's like big, it's busted. You're like sick. It's awesome. Like nice wheels on it. Looks cool. You feel good driving a big Escalade. You feel good getting a brand new F-150. It feels good, Yeah. Like I'm driving right now is like I'm driving this Hyundai Elantra N. So like a little sporty car, manual transmission. I love it. It's engaging and stuff like that, right? I got this like Tesla Model X, which is like cool. Gullwing doors, getting in. My kid loves it. His friend loves it. So cool. So like. We live in such a great world, man, that like it's not like one thing does it for anybody. It's not like you're like a son. My son is like, hey, sell iPhone 11, 12, 13, whatever. He's like amazing. But I think that like you just have to appreciate all kind of angles. But I think in terms of like one car, I think like we all kind of aspire to have a supercar when you have one or almost a supercar, because some people debate if an R8's a supercar.
I think
it's a quasi supercar. You know,
I get it, but
it's a sporty car. Right? It's a sporty car that looks like a fast car. But I think when you have that and you've experienced it, and then you realize like, well, it did nothing for me because I could not put my wife and son in the car at the same time unless they both drove it together, which they did sometimes, you know. Yeah. So I'm like, yo, the Tesla's cool because I can fit 4 people in the car, and it's, you know, it's fast as hell. No emotion, emotionless. It's not like you don't drive and you're like, wow, this is amazing. You're like, holy shit, this is the fastest thing ever. You're like, you know what I mean? It's crazy, but I think men, like anything else, right? Like it's what's the purpose at that time for you? We're all different and we all require different things, right? You know, we all have this dream because we're all aspiring, but once you give a human that's why like celebrities do drugs, is my opinion, right? Because they need something to keep them busy, and drugs are the only thing that keeps them, you know, engaged and like focused and on, and besides like all the experimental guys, but you know, they have the toys, they have the things. So it's either grind for more success, give back, or do drugs. I mean, there's many paths,
I get it.
Right? You know,
I mean, it's like human nature too, for sure.
It is, man. We're so lucky. Like, we're so lucky to have the world we have, because you can go like, and I've seen success stories. You can go from not having a lot in this world materialistically and financially to having a lot in this world. It just depends on how you go about doing it. And then like, it's cliche, but the journey is like really what's exciting, because when you get the money and the bank account has a number that you aspire to have, you're either too scared to spend it because you don't want to go back to here, or when you have it, you're like, what do I do now? Or you have a bigger problem, which is like a whole group of guys. It's like, okay, I got this money now. What do I do with it? Right? That's a whole big problem by itself, which never even came into my brain.
Yeah, no doubt.
You never think that.
You won't.
Like,
just you're different time, different place.
You're
not
like
reality. Yeah.
Yeah, and then now you have like you have the guys that are like, well, I got this money, I want to invest it, and I'm like. And then I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with my money? I'm not going to put it in the Canadian real estate system. It's so boring. I'm like, what if I invest into like building an apartment building, like a whatever X amount of doors apartment building, and then the market changes? Then I'm like, oh my God, well, this money was there. Now it's going to take me another 6 years or 8 years. By that time, my parents might be dead, right? My interests might change. You know, my wife might divorce me. Something could happen to my son. You never know.
You never know, yeah.
So I'm like, YOLO, man. Just enjoy your time on your money, like on your time. And whether you have 10 rentals, 20 rentals, 60 rentals, it doesn't matter. Whether you have fucking 100 grand, 400 grand, $1 million, it doesn't matter.
So do you
know?
Another question I was going to say, do you like holding or buying real estate in Canada or North America specifically for like the long-term scene not being what it was, or honestly, if it was, not what it is. Yeah. Would you still encourage someone to, like, I think you do, because you still do flips. Like, is that a totally different ball game?
So like, nobody knows the top, right? You know, nobody knows the top. So with that said, like last year I had a very successful year doing flips, and it was more because I felt like we were in this really uncertain time. We're still talking about COVID. As long as we're talking about COVID, people are very slow to move, right? It's only government that makes changes, and then people are like, whoa, what's going on? Or we have like just a crazy, but can't guess that.
Yeah.
So yes, I do flips. Do I want to do more flips this year? I've projected in my brain, and I kind of wrote down, I'm going to do half. I did 16 last year, and I'm going to do 8 this year is what I had. So I have 3 already currently up to this point. These rate changes and stuff just make it really uncertain. The markets have slowed down. So I'm like, hey, but in terms of the long term, so there's not a flip, but a rental brings somebody that hasn't touched the real estate market before, and that is a write-off, right? So if you need write-offs, you need to buy a rental, because the rental will allow you to have bills that you can funnel through there.
Sure.
That way you can say, hey, I make less money here, but I have a rental and I've renovated my house, which is why like most guys that are big contractors or big builders, they have amazing landscaping, not because their wife cuts a personal check for it, because the company does.
Yeah.
Right. So you're the company's paying for personal landscaping of 200 to 400 grand a year, or whatever that number happens to be. Right. So by having those opportunities, that's the problem, right? Like the average dude in Canada / family is paying after tax money, like personal tax money, paying the government 38 to 55%, and then going and spending that money. Yeah. Whereas the business owner is spending 15 to 18% tax, depending on where they land, or 12.5%.
So that investment property still serving a completely different purpose than long-term.
Exactly.
Stability.
Yeah. And if you can pull the money out, well, then you're writing off the interest. You see, you can't write off interest on a personal property, but you can write off interest on a rental property. So if you write off interest on a rental property, that just boosts the debt you can have. So it's a losing proposition all the time, but it gives you somewhere to put your money as an out. Sure. Do I think it's going to be like going up in value over time? I mean, that's fucking anybody's guess. But I feel like the way they've gone up so long, and because I'm in such an equity state, I have to get rid of it. It's just it just doesn't make any sense. It's stupid to hold the stuff, right? You know. Whereas the other hand is, people will say like, the top tier thing you want to get in this country is a revenue generating asset that needs a little amount of work. That's sure. Like what everybody's dream is going to have.
And
right?
what everyone thinks that's a rental property
is the holy goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
In more of my thinking is a little bit different. I always try to think a little bit what I think is ahead of the curve. It might be behind the curve. I don't know. We'll find out when time comes. But because I try to think ahead of the curve all the time, like it was like nobody wanted rentals. I remember when I was buying rentals, especially the duplexes, triplexes. I remember seeing a ton of them for sale.
Why? Just the
a ton
day to day.
Nobody. They're headaches, dude.
Okay. For the headaches behind them.
Yeah, the
but
headaches.
I mean, like,
the headaches.
okay,
the headaches.
sure.
But the headaches were large, right? The headaches were like, okay, I'm going to buy this rental. I'm going to pay $155,000 for it, and it's going to make $600 the front unit, $600 the back unit, and $650 in the top unit. So let's call that whatever, $1,850. Yeah. The expenses were, let's call it $300. Mm-hmm. Let's say mortgage and all that shit was like $500. So you left with like $800 to $1,000 a month. You get them times 10 of them. There's $10,000 a month. You're not doing anything. You're just hiring a guy paying 5%, and that was a business. But what happens is that people get real estate but stop at 3 or stop at 2. It's too much headache. So they stop, they buy 1, 2, they have a headache, and I went through it, 2 or 3, and then it just kind of collapses because it's just too much headaches. You just want to give it up. But you need, I guess, law of diminishing returns or whatever, fucking can't remember the name of it, but you need to have at least 5 for it to make sense. Once you have 5, you can hire things out, you can pay people off, you can do all that stuff. You can't do that stuff with 3. So if you get 5 or 6 or 7, then the math starts to work where this works. It becomes a business, and then you can get rid of it and you can leave it alone. Sure. So if you buy 1, you're asking for trouble.
And you think just a lot of people aren't aware of that, or like, I mean, you wouldn't be unless you talked and like have, you know, like, do your research, I guess. I mean,
I guess the only if you were asking me today, if you were saying like I have to buy rental properties, I have to get it, and I don't give a fuck what you say to me, I'm buying rental properties. The only path I could lead you down,
buy a bunch of them, is
you need to buy 5 at the minimum, but then you need to refinance as much as you can and make the right renovations to make sure that the guy that's appraising it that shows up is giving you a strong enough biggest number. Get that money out, as little money as you can on the properties, because whether or not that's a good strategy, it's not my strategy because that wasn't me, but it's a strategy of everybody else the last 3 years. So now you're fighting with these guys that have no skin in the game. That's inflated the shit out of it.
They've already pulled out their money.
And they've pulled out a lot of their money, you know. And then now they've bought these places that are like, let's say call it like $500K. The market's gone to 700. They're like, oh shit, took this money out, 200 already. Now I can sell this to 7, and now I get 200 already. I've pulled out 200, and it's fucking golden.
Why wouldn't you though, right? Like, I mean, like if you're that aware and like not naive about it all, then like
you're right.
Who loses other than I mean, like who loses?
That's the problem.
Buying the house at 700.
That's the problem.
Like, but that's,
I know.
Buyers beware. I mean, whose fault? Like,
I know. So like, again,
it's shitty to say that, I guess, because you don't want to you don't want it to come. You don't want to be buying that house back off them for 400 and off the bank.
The problem being is this, right? So like Mike at 20, Mike at 30, Mike at 40. Mike at 20 would say, "You're right. Fuck them. Like just get as many properties as you can." Overinflate the fucking market, get your money out, laugh it up, buy a Lambo, buy whatever you want. And then Mike at 30 is like, okay, this is cool. Now let's play some shit down. Let's sell a couple because, you know, this party was cool, but if I want this to continue, I've been in business before where it goes up like crazy, make lots of money, and then boom, it's gone the next day. You know, so then Mike at 40 is now, whoa. I don't want Mike at 20 because Mike at 20 is going to sink this market. And Mike at 35 was like, holy shit, this is getting bad. The last 5 years, you're having this market that's overly saturated. We're still running by the same narratives. And it's just a space that is just ultra dangerous, right? Like, if I was to tell you, Ian, you got to buy 5 properties, man, and I can't, and you hit him, he's like, dude, I found these 5 properties and they were $700,000 for a triplex because that's what I sold my shit for just now. You have to buy 7 times 5, 35. You got to spend $3.5 million in real debt. Well, whatever, like, you know what I mean? 30 and a half. And the total portfolio is $3.5 million to have 5. Just you can outsource them. These five at 3.5, whatever dollar amount it's going to end up being, is just crazy to think that that's what you have to get to for it to be self-sufficient. Whereas when I showed up, I had to have $550,000.
So is it, do you think, are those places, is that happening less now, or like are the big money out there buying them? Like, I can't see the big money buying 5 real, like spending that $3.5 million to buy those places.
It's a mixed bag, right? Because you have like, I mean, like we've got obviously the sharing economy with Airbnb that's kind of changed it up a little bit. You've got people that, and this is where Mike at 40 or Mike at 30 and 40 doesn't like Mike at 20, because this guy right here is thinking, like, with all this crazy investment, you're really pulling people away from having homes. You're having people from having homes. You have higher crime. It's all old man talk. My son would be like, "You're so old. You're talking old man talk." But really, it's like I was a really big fan of like this 3 to 5% bump every year. I was cool with that because then house markets would go up. When you have like a 20 to fucking 35% bump every year for the last 4 years, it's a problem.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
That means nothing. It almost shows you that it means nothing. It means something for
it,
sure.
It kills people to get a house. It kills me to be in this business now because now I've expedited my plan of like long term. I wasn't gonna sell I had 144 units, which was I wanted to get to 200 units and then keep it till I was 50. That was my goal.
Yeah.
It's
not even a realistic plan anymore. Like, I guess it is, but like,
no, why? Why?
Yeah.
The only people that are keeping properties, the only people in this city that are keeping properties for long term, they start off saying long term like I did, but change their plan. The only ones that are not selling right now is that the guys who've been in the game for so long that their tax position is so bad that they can't sell. Yeah, can't sell. Tax position is so bad, can't sell. That's number one. The other part of it is the second part of it is these guys are old and their kids may or may not want it. So they're like, well, they don't say if they don't want it. They don't say if they do want it. So I'm just going to let this sit here until I die. Yeah, and then they're going to die.
So this is my situation you're kind of talking about, right?
Yeah, this exactly. Yeah, he does. Like, it's too much money to sell it. Like, they're like, okay, well, the problem is that most Canadians can't afford to buy anything for cash. They can't.
Yeah, no.
You can't cut a check. You need the bank's help, right? So if you need the bank's help, you cannot skip the government and pay the seller directly. Yes. Nobody can come to me and pay me $11 million when I'm asking for cash. Nobody can pay me that. Yeah. They've got to go through a bank. So now my customer is the bank. Yeah. My customer isn't even you because I'm just replaced. I can put anybody and say, look, this will work on paper. My customer's the bank. Yeah. So the bank depends on the bond rates. The bank depends on all these rates. And if their rates are shit, I'm not selling this building. Yeah, that's the problem. So that's the real deal, you know? It's not an easy game, man. I don't like the way this thing is, but I can't change it, you know, but I can just speak from experience to know, to maybe guide somebody in the future to say like, guide in the future and say, look, man, maybe this is not the best time to buy real estate. Maybe it's the best time if you have a piece of shit you can get for a decent price, renovate it, and refinance it or flip it. Yeah. I mean, like, people are really scared to pay taxes. That's the weird thing about this country. People are scared to pay taxes. I'm like, fuck, pay the tax, man. Yeah. It's better to pay taxes. You have the money in your back that's clear and free and clear. It's yours. You don't owe them anything. It's not like you have like, that's the problem. It's like we're scared to pay. It's because I've worked both sides. I've worked at Audi where I've made as high, which is I think pretty weak, but in one of my best years as a car sales guy, and I was like number 4th in Canada. My best year was 130 grand, which was like terrible. Okay. In terms of a dollar amount for being like good, right? You know what I mean? I'm totally open with money, but
for sure.
I thought that was crazy. And I paid almost 50% taxes. So I got 70 grand, let's call it, you know, in my hand. Whereas if you have your own company and you make 95 grand, that's basically 70. That's actually more than you make 90 grand. It's like 70 grand in your pocket. So a 90 grand business owner makes the same as 130 working for somebody, right? So you're thinking like, man, those numbers are so drastically different, you know? And and I don't know, man, it's a hard one because we always rely on like the government and like paying the tax, but the payroll guy, I totally get why he doesn't pay tax. This self-employed guy, pay the tax. Yeah. Pay the tax.
Yeah, totally. Trust me.
Nothing. It's nothing. You know, it's not 55%.
Yeah.
I mean, you could break it down and if you make so much money and you're personally taking the money, but if you're making it in a corp, just leave it in a corp. You know?
So should I buy this? Should my, keeping in mind I've like built infrastructure for this building, should a big objective be for me to buy this?
You're in a hard spot. Because like your ecosystem revolves around this building, right? So you, like obviously I've seen the numbers to see what you pay for rent and then see what the ownership portion of it looks like. I would only want to own something today if my control was at jeopardy. That's the only way.
Really?
Yeah, because if for example, like the owner passes away and his kids take it over and they want to kick you out, you're fucked. Yeah. Right? And then like starting from scratch is not easy. Right?
Okay, so to be completely honest with you, that is comes into very little consideration for my situation. You know, like I'm sure I could sign something right now that said, you know, till the end of time for me, I'm this tenant.
Yes.
So that's never been the really like in my decision making, just because of the reality of my situation.
So why would you not rent forever?
I don't know, because honestly, I'm under the impression that I would want to owning something of this size or whatever opens a lot more doors for me.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. I think ownership is a weird kind of case. We never really own anything in this country. I keep referring to in this country because we are so built on debt.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're built on debt. Just because you own it just means you have a name on a fucking deed.
Yeah.
But that deed is, you're not in first position. You're in second position.
Yeah.
The bank is in
They'll
first.
take it first.
So basically they own it. You don't own it. So like really what's the point of owning it?
Yeah.
I think we're really just, it's like the whole conversation about like it's a whole conversation about like unconscious thoughts versus conscious thoughts. Our unconscious thoughts make us think like we need to be on ownership. Like I will never lease a car in people, like not me. I will always lease a car half the time, but I will never lease a car because I don't own it. I have to buy it. I'm like, okay, but the bank owns it until you pay the last payment, and that last payment will come out. The last 3 years of that payment will come out when the car's a piece of shit. Sure. The first 3 years or 4 years, the car's awesome. You love it. You want to tell all your friends about it. The last 3 years, nobody cares. So you're gonna want to own a building. Total my opinion. Feel free to comment below.
Yeah, please do it.
So my thoughts are in your specific case, because this is a pure business. If you have fear that you can get kicked out of this building, that the owners can pass away, and then the kids or whoever takes ownership wants to kick you out, and if those two things are at jeopardy, then I would buy it. If you want to buy it because you feel like you want ownership to own something or a write-off, I wouldn't waste your time. That only makes sense if you had a great year the year before on paper and you paid way too much tax, and you see another year like that come and you need expenses, then I would maybe get this building because it's going to be heavy and cost to paper. If you can steal it from him, I would buy it from him.
What about like?
Yeah, it's not getting any. It's not going to get any more expensive. It might, but it's not going to get overly crazy expensive. And if it does, he's going to kick you out anyways. Which is some of the first two, right? You know.
So does he do? What about on a pure overhead value? Like,
well, I got to look at your math for that, right? I got to look at you got to look at your math or whatever. I mean, you don't need me for that, but I think you look at your math and say, well, this is what it costs me to rent, and if my rent is, say, let's call it. So I'm speaking numbers. Let's call it $5,000. Okay. Just numbers. If my rent costs me $5,000 and with my mortgage and all that stuff costs me $5,000, and it kind of sees, and this $5,000 on the mortgage is a 30-year deal, which is not easy to get, but let's say it is. And then $5,000 is here. You have to look at your family dynamic and say, hey, like my family, my wife and my son, my wife and my child, like her family's in Nova Scotia, and I think I'm gonna be this building. I'm gonna be in this place for like 10 more years, and after that, my life's gonna change. Well, hey, I would never fucking buy this place, man, because these buildings are not easy to sell. Yeah. You may think they're easy to sell. In your eyes, they might, but in reality, it's not.
No, I'm sure
right?
It's not.
You got to buy something that's liquid. So I'm all about like movement and change and stuff like that, which is not a normal piece here, but the world's a different place it was before, right?
So to kind of plug into that equation, if it does cut my overhead in half,
yes,
that's a big motivating factor.
He would never sell it to you if it was half, would he? I don't think so. If he sells,
he wouldn't. You're right.
He would not. He would be the dumbest guy if he sold it to you. Hopefully, he's not watching.
But there's a real human aspect to that as well. Like,
then you're stealing it.
Yes,
exactly. So if you can steal it, then you do it. That always is the case.
So here's a win-win
You're
for
moving
everyone.
closer, so this is obviously getting really exciting.
Well, because this is what it goes through my head. Because
sure.
You bring that up. It's like, what if he like. Again, there's a very human aspect to my relationship and this situation.
Yes.
Far more than probably not to. I don't know it, but
totally.
I'm sure. Like,
yes, I hear you.
90% of deals you've done are not like human to human interaction.
Not really.
It's money to money, and it's numbers to numbers, right? Like, there's a very above average real aspect to the.
That's the only way you're stealing. So the only way you're stealing and getting a deal. I don't mean stealing in a negative connotation. I mean like he's giving you a deal because he knows you. He wants to see, and that's because he's not 20s, 30s, or 40s, Mike. He's 50s and 60s, Mike. I got enough money. I know he's talking about.
And on top of that, again, the big motivation for him is like the million he'll make on the sale price of it at that, because he stole it from the last person that was here for I think 150. Put 200 into it. New roofs, and that brought him to. He's total in 10 years ago for 400. Now he sells it to me for $1 million or fucking $2 million.
Yeah, whatever.
And I'm still dropping.
Yes. So that's the problem. If you spend $2 million, what is your rent? Do you mind me asking? Can you tell me or no? If you don't, if you don't tell me, don't tell me. If you don't speak it, don't say it. Actually, it's better not to say it because it'll be online, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you. For sure, I'm seeking your advice.
But I would generally speak and say you got to look at that $2 million and see what is the rent give you for the $2 million and say, well, it's not fucking worth $2 million,
right? Exactly,
right. And if here's the problem, you walk into a danger zone or a snake's nest, really. If you're like, look, I pay you let's call, I'm picking numbers here, right? Because I don't know what it is. But if it's, let's just pick these numbers up. If it's $1 million, it should be like I'm just picking numbers. If $1 million is $7,000 or $8,000 a month in rent, if you pay $4,000 a month in rent and he wants to sell it to you for $1 million, I'd be renting forever, right? Whereas like if you're paying, obviously if he wants $700K for this building and you're paying $5,000, they're equal, makes no difference, buy the fucking place. If you're paying, the math is there, right? So that is the answer. Because, and if you can lock in that number for as long as you can because you have a relationship with him, then that makes sense. Like he's obviously the right type of landlord that wants to watch you succeed. He wants to, you've got an emotional attachment with him. He's a good guy. You've had him for 10 years, whatever the case may be. That's a positive problem to have. But don't make it complicated by throwing this I want to buy it thing for a reason that you have no idea why you want to do it.
No, yeah, right? I don't want it to come across like that. Again, I think numbers-wise, I'll tell you after, and it's kind of like...
If it's like that path, then you need to know the decision that you need to make.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, if you're paying $10,000 and he's willing to give it to you for $1 million and your math works out to be $5,000 a month, and you're like, fuck, I'm going to buy this because it just makes sense.
Okay.
It's just a matter of him wanting to sell it to you is a different story, but at least if you can get like first right of refusal or something,
Yeah, definitely.
And I'll just explain to you the way first right of refusal works. It's really interesting, and not everybody knows how this works. But if, for example, he does not want to sell it to you right now, but he wants to sell it to you in the future. Yeah. Okay. And you say, look, I want to give you $1 million for this thing. So you give him the first right of refusal comes in a way. I used to always believe that the first right of refusal would happen like this. It would happen where I get an offer from you for $1 million. Then I put it on the market and I go out there, and then I get another offer for $800K. A first right of refusal means that I have to see this offer at $800K. Yeah. And because I gave you $1 million, I just dropped my offer to $800K.
Yeah.
So I've lost that $1 million now. So as a seller, the first right of refusal is not a good thing because now I'm exposing my other bids to yours when I know that yours is going to be one of the highest. So being buddies with somebody is actually a double-edged sword. We get caught in the trap. I'm not saying this is your specific case. This is just really a very general statement.
Though. Yeah,
that people think because I buddy somebody up, I'm getting a deal. Most of the time, you're getting fucked.
Yeah.
Right? That's the problem. Because they know this land could be contaminated. They know this money you've invested in here. They know you're deep. They know you've already bought the car before you even walk through the door. Right? You know what I mean? So it's such a tough balance.
Totally.
It's such a tough balance because you're like, I want a fucking deal, man. I've been here for fucking 10 years. And he's like, you're in there for 10 years. You're fucked. You spent all this money.
Yeah.
So you're like trying to figure out this right game. He knows that you're the best guy. You know that he's the...
A lot of like what you're saying really makes me, and I know this going into all this,
but just like somebody else
is really making me appreciate my situation that I'm in.
Yeah.
Because it's not like...
Yeah.
We
are all blessed in different ways. Man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The timing of it.
It's timing and every. Yeah, for sure.
It's
I mean,
key.
like it almost makes you think that you could never. I mean, anything I've done here, and even talking about this out loud, you could never, ever, ever prepare for because it doesn't. The human interaction that we have and the genuine, well-being.
The come
for
up.
each,
The come up. He was with you through the come up.
Exactly.
Right. And he can see that, and he can like. It's funny, man, because like the world does not work that way.
No, and you could get some dick, right? Like
totally.
Again, through COVID and all this shit, right?
Totally.
Like me having that relationship has been so beneficial to both of us.
Yes.
Versus fucking Tricar saying, "Pay me my
salt,
10
man.
grand or leave."
Or
it's like
notice,
I'm going to buy fitness equipment off these gyms that are closing because of that situation. Yes. I'm like. I'm just going to get out of here real quick because I know my situation and it's like super, super, super lucky and
no. So if you're in that position, man, I think you just need to hone it and know.
Wait it out.
Wait it out. I think you just really my real pusher there was really just to make sure that you're not caught up in the I need to own it thing.
I'm not. Not pertaining to this building per se, but I want to, and even going into this more, like I think now, even after this conversation, I will definitely focus more on like getting a steal and flipping, going that route, and kind of not quick money, but quicker money than sitting on a rental for 10 years and like
so like I mean I can talk a little bit about that. I think like there's this whole like wholesaling game. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's basically like the normal path is like finding a realtor and selling it, or the other path is like throwing in a Kijiji Facebook Marketplace or somebody and try to sell it privately, right? So there's this wholesaling thing where you get a whole bunch of flyers in the mail that says like, we'll buy your house or whatever. And what that essentially is basically like they will buy the house from you on an actual contract. They'll say, I'll give you this much money for the house, and then they'll take that value and then they will sell that value to somebody else. So how that works essentially, so then people are like, oh, those guys are assholes and all that stuff. And yes, you can have some assholes, but in any business you can have assholes. But where the business is actually good is there are people that are hoarders. There are people that are in a tough position. So because part of those flips I've done last year is I bought houses from people that could not actually afford to have those houses because they would default on payments like crazy. They were so backed up, the bank was basically going to evict them. Sheriff's going to show up the next day. They needed the house paid out. So I would just show up, I'd buy all their debt out, and they would be able to walk without any sort of judgment against them and any sort of debt on their name forever.
Going forward,
right? So then, but nobody want to do that because it's just too risky. They don't know what's in the house. They haven't checked the house. They don't know what's found it. I didn't give a shit about that. I was like, just give me product, give me fucking bricks and mortar, and I'll deal with whatever gets thrown in my way. And the law of averages will always work in your favor if you're doing a whole bunch, right? So when we talk about that, or people put flyers out, what'll happen is the flyers will show up on people's doors, and then you'll get calls, and these people will say, "You're asshole, you're a dick, you're stealing from me, or you're whatever." So when I say steal, it just comes across negative, but what it really is, it can be negative. There could be one or two deals in there we totally rip somebody off, hypothetically, right? But the problem is when you do that, you're actually risking your name in the future. So you try not to do that. You try to be like, okay, we have a system right now where it's generally speaking, and it's so frothy that you could sell somebody's house and charge them 5% commission. So 5% on $1 million is $50,000. At $1 million valuation, if I go to the person, I'll give you $950. I'm stealing the house from you because it's worth $1 million, but you ain't getting $1 million in your pocket. You're getting $950 in your pocket. So I will give you $940 or $930. It's a quick done deal. We'll close tomorrow, or not. You know what I mean? Close that week. We'll close. Basically, most guys want 15 days, but we can close in like 4. So we'll close in that point, and when we close in that point, why are you gonna be mad at me, right? So that's a steal for you. So if you can find a neighbor that's going to sell their $800,000 house for fucking $720, you're stealing it because you can clean up a little bit and sell it for $850 when you put the effort to take out all their shit.
Yes, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
That's really what it's about. Now that market is getting tougher and tighter, but you've been in this game long enough that there will be a connection down the road that you could get 1 or 2 flips a year that will supplement your income by $50,000 to $100,000, which is a lot of money, right? So if you can do that kind of stuff, and I applaud anybody to do that, and so that's an angle, I guess, So
better angle than buying long-term property. No, again, the building.
I would never. Buy and holds, dude.
Don't do
garbage.
Yeah.
My opinion, buy and holds complete garbage.
And if you do, you need at least 5 of them.
You need 5 of them. Yeah, that's the game. Yeah, it's flips are good because they're easy out, right? It used to be a game when we were younger called Pass the Parcel. It was like the music played, and then like you'd have this fucking parcel. You pass it, and the music stop. You hold the parcel. You're fucked, right? Basically the same shit. That's where we're in right now. I mean, like I get all sides from. It's a very heated, debatable thing, right? Where you're like, this is solid, secure immigration. Rates, banks will never let this happen. You hear it all. So. You just gotta make that choice. Right? You got a path.
Interesting.
Right?
I gotta always kind of ask people this: do you have any other than like cars? Obviously, do you have any odd? I don't know why I always revert to like odd, but like any other hobbies and or interests, talents that you like?
No, man. No, I think I'm just on a real passion to like make people better. I think like when people ask me like, hey, I just want to pick your brain. Now I've created these events that I'm like, you want to pick my brain? Let's go to this event. And you can see me there. You can ask me what I want, Not because I'm some special guy. I just feel like my time is really limited right in this world, And I'm like, I want to spend time with my son and my family and like the things like my hobbies I like to do and, my job, my stuff, right? My stuff. So I'm like, okay, so I find a path. So I really tell people that like, man, if people are using you for something, find a business out of it and then push them to those paths. That way it's done, right? Hobbies, I like the Raptors. I mean, they suck, but they're awesome at the same time. You know what I mean?
Games, right?
When I was in Toronto, when I lived in Toronto, but now in London, no, I don't just watch online. I'm lazy. Just sit at home, watch the games. You know what I mean?
Did you ever play basketball and stuff
no,
like that?
No. I wish I did, man. No, it's just skinny brown guy, dude. We don't play basketball. No, we don't play basketball.
How old is your son?
He's
just
10.
He's
10. Yeah, I took so it's really interesting. I took him out of school, which is a really like another debatable thing. Hotspot, I guess.
Whatever.
But I found like when through COVID and they were doing online schooling, I found that the way the systems are working at the moment, unpaid, that is, like not private stuff. Is that you have parents that are looking out for their children. So if the child is not as fast or as up to date, obviously in every class, I say this like with all respect to these professions, but you pick a doctor as an example, you got 30 dudes in one class or 30 girls and guys in one class, only 8 of them are good. So you have 22 doctors that are practicing right now that are complete garbage, and they're just going through the process of life to make money. That's when you go to the doctor, they're like, okay, so you have a problem with it? Okay, see you later. Boom, see get the fuck out of here. Because they're volume centers. They're assholes as far as I'm concerned. They're built in a system that they cannot break, so they become assholes, right?
Totally.
And it's all monetary stuff. So so if you look at school like that, you look at my son, who's, I would say, the average of everything, and I'm going through this stuff, and this teacher is doing the best she can online while 5 kids are fucking yelling and screaming, and they're trying to teach math. It's a fucking chaotic mess. And I'm like, what is the point to try to make money in this world if I'm going to let the future go through this nonsense?
Yeah.
So I'm like pulling him out. So I took him. So all my travels, I've taken him. I've experienced him. Yeah. And now when he goes around kids his age, I can listen to him talk.
For sure.
And his speech.
Yeah, I mean that's
no comparison.
That's like the epitome of probably. Yeah, I mean the closer you probably go into like private schools like that. Again, my daughter's in daycare, so I don't have that. Luckily, I don't, young, and I still have that battle to figure out. But it's like even now, I'm sure the more private schools are gaining attention because they're able to be a little bit more flexible that
Canadians
way. And
making more money. They can throw it at schools now. It doesn't cost as much. Like 30 grand today per year is not what 30 grand was 3 years ago. So they can put, it's, and we are systematically built to be lazy. So we're like, oh, that's going to be better for them. It costs money. There's it. Pay them, throw the money. But parenting is a full-time job, dude. So like, obviously, like some of my businesses have taken a little bit of a backseat because I focus time on my son.
Sure.
And it's amazing. Like I'm growing like crazy. It's amazing. I can watch him grow. I can watch him talk back to me, and I'm like, that was a good one. Like it's a balance of being a friend and being your dad, right? You know what I mean? But I think, man, like the kids are tough, right? Like it's a whole different conversation. But I think that like it's a challenge for sure to like be with him every day and teach him stuff every day. It's not easy to be like, here's math. So I'm like, I got a tutor. Here's math. My wife's like, what have you done with him today? I'm like, not much. Like, what do you do, right? But at the same time, I still believe in my heart that like I can show him more. That like I always try to think about this way. I'm like, if I died tomorrow, can this guy live by himself and be sustainable? And the answer is yes. I'm good. That's it.
There's no way, even just saying it, right? Like I'm sure your son, a group of like 10-year-olds, I don't know if he's 10-year-olds, he would stand out because of that. Like, I've
he has
met
the freedoms, right?
It's so funny you say this because I've met probably someone but his son came in the other day and like he's probably the same age. He's like, he shook my hand. He said like, it's like I was talking to an adult. I'm like, man, and I know your dad. Like, it's. I think it's a lot of how, like, I'm sure when you can, I don't know if he's taking him out of school or anything like that, but like just the whole like upbringing, the concept is there, and it's like,
you got to put time in your children, man. I think that's a big one. Again, that's Mike and 40 talking. 20s wouldn't give two shits really, but I think that if there's ever an opportunity to take your child out of school, if you can not even afford it, but if you can like master it, because I think the affording part, any humans will make anything work, right? Like if you think like this is my focus, my child, I'm going to focus on it. Like mothers spend all kinds of time and effort and love to their children and will sacrifice and work fucking 20 jobs to make sure their child goes through an education, like post-secondary or whatever. That like as two adults, if you have two working family, you can make your child work. You can figure it out, man. So again, it's all the test. My whole life is an experiment. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I do know if you see something in front of you and you're like, I can make it better. Fuck, why not give it a try?
Do you have any like big unrealistic or what seems to be unrealistic ambitions at this point and at 40 that like
getting in shape?
No, hey, but that's real. Like no, like something like that. Like
no, you know what, dude? I don't know.
Health though, that means health.
Health is important. Health. I mean, health is important. Obviously, with social media, it's really fucking blown up. But I think, man, like, I don't. It's hard. It's a hard one, man, because I feel like it's like, what do you give somebody for their birthday that feels like he's had everything? Very difficult, right? Very difficult, And it's just
I guess that would be like some son, be able to know your
like so it's like emotional things, right? Like emotional, like sweet, caring things. Like that's the win, man. Like materialistic doesn't give two shits, right? So like ambitions and goals is this. The problem is like with that makes it hard because like if you're asking a guy that has a business that's growing and he can see like dreams with this business and he wants to be like, I'm gonna be I sell cereal and I'm gonna be the #1 cereal brand in North America, and everybody's like, yeah, fuck you, buddy, you're the best. We love you, love your cereal. That's just.
I feel like something like that would be like for your son to take you on a trip and pay for it.
Yeah, something like that.
Same
something
thing
like
that you want to do for your parents now. Like that
or
would
teach
probably,
him. Or like teach his buddy is like. So I have this thing. Okay, so I have this thing that I've taught my son from a very young age, and he teaches his friends, and I try to teach this as much as I go, and it's a really cool piece. And it's like I call it. It's exactly like dating. Okay, so like when you date. For the most part, the first 3 months are honeymoon, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with materialistic items. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't used a product in your room for more than 3 months,
get rid of it.
Yeah. So like he bought like an example, he bought this Nintendo Switch, right? It was like a big thing for a while. So he had it for 3 months, and on like the 4th or 5th month, he came to me and he's like, I want to get this thing, and I'm like, and that's how it started. It started like you get rid of stuff that you haven't used for 3 months. Now you have that money, because as me growing up. My mom was very big, like if we get something, it's yours, you keep it, and don't get rid of it because it's like sentimental or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, well, sentimental is great, except it's sitting there, fucking could be in a landfill, right? Because it's garbage. Like a Game Boy is garbage after 10 years. Yeah. So I've really trained him that. So now he goes to his friend's house, and his friend was like, he's like, I want to buy this, and I'm like, you're putting too much stress on your mom. You're a single mom. Not a ton of income there, and I said like you're stretching your mom too much. I was like, what do you have in your thing? And then as soon as I said that, my son took over the conversation. It was like he's like you gotta
get rid of this.
Yeah, then I was like, yo, this is gold. And I'm like, you're listening, because now you're converting that Switch that was once upon a time $450 to $300 3 months later.
For sure.
And that $300 gets recycled to something new, and then you keep recycling it until that becomes zero eventually, but it's less zero, right? So that's kind of like a recycle statement that I just try to keep. So it's like those little things, man. You try to you can't be perfect though, right?
Yeah. Your wife, is she like
she's a superhero.
What's she like? Yeah.
She's a fucking superhero. Yeah, she's really good.
She like
entrepreneur.
Endless support for, so
so she does eyebrows, like microblading,
cool.
It's like a thing for chicks.
Yeah.
So people travel from fucking all over Canada to get her eyebrow, because like a woman's face is like the holy grail, right? You know what I mean? Body second, maybe. The face is like key. So like, of course, eyebrows are a big deal and whatever. So she does eyebrows. And she kills it, man. She kills it. She's really good. We're both good at two different things, right? Like she's good at like her customer base. She's a very big heart. We've always joked around like I'm the cold-hearted guy, and she's like the one with all the big sweetness. She cares, and she all the good stuff, right? But it's good because like she's driven by me, and I'm driven by her. She's like, I don't do laundry. Like I'm not a laundry guy. I'm like, we'll hire laundry. I don't care. She does laundry. Awesome. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like she's like most women love home sense and all that stuff. So she's designing and all that stuff. So an example for like a business, as an example, is like with one of the buildings. There's 36 units in it, and I really wanted her to get. There was like a very tough wall I had to break for her to know what the rental business was like.
Sure.
Because it's just headaches, right? When like we look from the outside, it's like it makes a little bit of money, but it's always a headache. So when we got this building, I said like, well, why don't we make a couple Airbnbs? So what we did, she loved it because she could go and she could stage it and all that stuff. So she staged it, and then it became like, okay, we're good for like 1 week rentals and 2 week rentals. Then like started becoming 1 or 2 day rentals, and started becoming a headache. And then she realized this is a fucking pain in the ass. I want out of this business.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, sick, you figured it out. That's what the fuck I deal with all the time, right? So it's like those growing pains with somebody over a period of time, they become the person for you.
Is she
right?
Okay, that kind of like.
So she does. So
reluctant to that type of stuff, like, or like if you had a big thing, like I want to go buy like something crazy. Is she like, get out of here, or she like kind of like, okay, see you when you do it type of thing?
Yeah, I think like I don't. She's the really good thing about her is that like she's not like totally materialistic that way, which people can get caught in very easily, and she can at times. But it's like what I told my son when he was younger. I gave him $5, and I gave him $5 when I went to the supermarket. And I said, and he picked that up. Well, he would know, with no money, he'd pick up whatever the fuck he wanted to pick up. I gave him $5. I'm like, that's all you can spend. And then all of a sudden he picked something up. And I'm like, would you trade this for that? And he's like, no. Right? So if you can get that on your side, you're always winning, right? You're always winning. So it takes years, man, right? It takes years because like fundamentally, your grow up, how everybody grows up is different than how somebody else grows up, right? So it's like all those like foundational factors. And I'm not cheap by any means. I just think that if like sometimes I'm like, we don't need a fucking $8,000 couch when a $3,000 one will do.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? You know what I mean? It's like wasted space. So it's like on part you want to be cheap, on other parts you don't want to be cheap. And I try to like I'm just trying to get everybody to understand is that like with this like international investing thing, I'm creating a vacation spot that is going to be a rental thing and also be a designing thing for her and also being a cool thing for the Instagrammers and also being a cool thing that I'm investing. So I'm like always trying to find something that's multifaceted, So I've kind of got her like understanding all that stuff, and it's difficult to kind of understand vision when you don't see a result.
Totally, and
right?
like
so it's a risk,
like
right?
if you're an entrepreneur that always has like
Something
thinking
on its fucking
bigger
brain,
than their head, then it's always definitely hard for other people if they're not programmed like that to see it. So I'm sure there's that.
Yeah, so she's really good. She's really good that way. Also, just in saying that, I'm as wide as far as I think. I'm like, I call myself like Mr. 70%. And I say it that way because like I could make my roofing company as an example. Like, it's been around for a long time now. 11 years is a long time for me. I could make it, I could add like 20 more people, but I have zero interest in doing that. I'm like, it's cool the way it is. It brings me zero stress. Same with like this education thing. I could make it bigger, but it brings me zero stress. So I will do stuff. And that was I should have started right the start. But anything that brings me stress, I'm gone. I don't want any stress. So making something really big and really big, grand plans.
Is that Mike at 40?
That's Mike at, dude, it's been Mike
20,
at
30, 40?
Yeah. I'm laughing it up. If like rentals were a headache, no doubt. But when I got headaches, you know what I would do? I would bring my buddy in. Like if I had renters that were headaches and they were mad at me, I'd get my buddy that was a plumber or an electrician to go there and get my tenant to be even more mad at me. Just so we could laugh about it, right? Not be less mad at me.
I feel
just
like
a joke with it,
that's
right?
how you handle shit in general too. Like if you think you're going to go in that business, not have headaches, it's going to be a headache for you. If you know there's headaches, and it's like, that's not stress. That's just working through problems.
Oh, exactly, man. I think that's exactly it, right? And yeah, so I mean, women are also built different than we are in some respects, right? They're more emotional about things. We can be less emotional if we have to about certain things, you know? And I think just the value of money is important, right? I think if you know the value of money, I think we just lost it for like kids nowadays. They don't have no idea what value of money is.
No.
Like they have no fucking value, man.
I know.
It's just crazy.
And it's like, I mean, unless I guess that's your role as a parent to kind of navigate
to teach them,
like,
to teach them, you know,
let them learn on their own, but teach them kind of what you can.
I know, man. I know. And I mean, like, I don't know what the future holds for everybody and everything, you know, and I will say that, man, I always believe at this point, like Mike at 40 and Mike at maybe 30 would also tell you that, like, we've also been raised to live a lie a little bit, that we thought, at least I thought, that money was the key to happiness. And it's not the key to happiness. It's some other bullshit, but it's not the key to happiness, you know? And it's still shoved down our throats till today, you know? If you don't have money because you've committed to, like, people will still do this. It just drives me crazy. People will still commit to like these long ass car loans when I'm like, guy, like, you don't fucking need to spend $800 a month on a car loan if you can't afford it, or it's a percentage more than it should be in your budget. And it's, you're trying to fit in, but like, look within, man. Build yourself first. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like
I'm on that same page, but but that's harder.
It's hard to break.
Like, you know, easier said than done.
It is
for
easier said
guys
than done,
or people that aren't programmed in that way to like be self-reflective, to look within, I guess.
But how is that ever gonna change, right? Like, how
like
is,
as a society type of thing?
Like, I mean, these dealerships, like, as a car guy, at these dealerships are built on selling rust proofing, fucking extended warranties and all that stuff, because they're like, they sell you a car that they guarantee is supposed to be a good car, and then they start to jam you fucking rust proofing, and you're like, yo, I just bought this fucking thing, it's supposed to be good, and I'm gonna keep it forever. No, you're not, because it's probably gonna get you in an accident.
Maybe that's just North America, like our society, because that goes back to saying like, you know, the poverty guys still want to work super hard to kind of get up to the next level, to get to the next level, versus you know, not so much here. And it's like,
I mean, and the problem is that at what point will it change where we actually have to work here, when we're so in debt that we got no choice, right? So you have to, like, you got to put the work in now, maybe before everybody else does, before the laziness takes over, right? You know.
Do you ever see Canada not being your home base?
It's hard because I came from Dubai at, you know, like, as I said, I was like born in Belgium at 1 year old, and then I went to Dubai. I left Dubai at 17, came here, and then I've been here obviously ever since. It's so hard, man, because we are. The world's global now, but it's so hard because we have our friends. I don't have very many friends because like my friends, I change all the time, and my friends either don't keep up or hate me because I've changed, whatever, you know. But we are so programmed to have friends, to have a system, to have a car, to eat at the same places, to make that money that every month, to watch TV, to get into sports. We are so stuck. We can't break. So leaving here completely is probably going to be impossible unless it's a total fucking shit show.
I mean, even though even you, like, is that would that be a hypothetical? Like if none of that was in the question?
No,
or do you
like
enjoy
I think the grand scheme of it really, like if I fast forward to Mike at 45, let's say, for example, probably go around. Like if I can accomplish having 8 different places, it would be cool to have 8 spots I could live for 2 weeks at a time.
Perfect, yeah.
And just basically, and if social media is still a big thing, which it seems to be, still do video online and then make income from that, and then obviously like the rentals and stuff and whatever. But I think just having, like, social media is a huge, for anybody who doesn't know, man, social media is a huge fucking platform.
Do you see, and again, kind of bringing this full circle, do you see, like, again, YouTube and stuff is like becoming such a thing for you, like, do you see a time where this international investing and investing anything in general becomes a little like
too much, or that becomes something, you mean?
Where like YouTube and stuff almost just trumps that stuff so much that it almost becomes irrelevant. Not irrelevant, like sure you have your places to stay, but
I don't, man, I don't, like, financially, I don't think so. I just can't see it. It's lucrative, no doubt, but I think our real estate and listen, man,
it's still 2 different levels.
Anybody that's building any fucking home builder today, even if they're a shit home builder, is making like between $50,000 and $80,000 a home. Right. So the good ones are making like $150,000 a home. They're doing 10 a month, or whatever. They're making $1 million a month, right? They're not fucking making peanuts, right?
Yeah, but like even saying that, like, you could make. I mean, there's YouTubers out there making.
I can tell you money. You want money? You want no money? I don't give a fuck. I'll say I'm easy. So like, we get paid per view, per click. So per cost per click, basically, right? So every 10,000 views, we get anywhere between $10 and $14. So if we average a million views a month, that's US. So we're making anywhere between 10 and 15 grand a month. So if we scale that up every month, then it becomes 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month.
Still not touching that.
No, like, I mean, there's growth there, right? Like, there's growth there, and that doesn't include, like, let's say, for example, merch or all that stuff. So regardless of what the numbers happen to be, it's very easy to find. The good thing about YouTube is I can find out what everybody on YouTube makes. This is not a secret, right? It's not a secret. You can go to websites. There's ones that tell you exactly what each person makes, whatever. The cool part about it is that, or bad part about it really, is that it's a tougher space to break. So if I, like, that personal channel that you saw, it's going to be difficult for me to take that channel to get to, say, 1 million subs. That's going to take me like maybe 7 years if YouTube projects the same way it does. The car channel is a different story because people like cars, easy to come. I've mastered how I kind of talk about it and all that stuff. I have days, but overall I mastered it. So for sure. It's been like, we're growing, or every month we're growing. So I don't see us changing that way. But yeah, dude, totally. I mean, the internet can totally take off. But like, dude, now I can go to like anywhere in Canada for the most part. If I go somewhere, I can get a car.
Ultimately, right? Like, it's, so would you call it kind of like a passion project type of thing?
Very passionate. Like, very, very passionate. But it's a passion project, but it's cool because now my son thinks I'm the fucking superhero because I'm doing like cool shit that his friends want to do.
Probably relevant to his world.
Yeah. And like, young cats will be like, oh, what do you do? Like, people ask me what I do for work. It's the hardest fucking question to answer. I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm whatever you want me to be. Because I don't know what I am.
That's perfect though. I mean, like, that's
versatile, right?
Yeah, that's like aspiring to be that way. Like, that's ultimate. Like, I mean, I say ultimate freedom. That could be perceived in a bunch of different ways. But like, that's a great. That would be. I say that because I'm in the last few years I've shifted from, like, I don't want to be a gym owner. Like, I am one, but like I don't want to be like, the problem is gym owners are tough because it's a very saturated business.
Sure,
right? And that's just like one thing aside, right? Like,
and the only way to really make money in the gym business, like Hormozy said it, like, he was like, man, you got to just as many gyms as you can, scale up, put in this whole thing, like, you're gonna lose fucking 30 pounds and fucking 40 pounds in 30 days.
I just listened to
and then
not that long ago.
And then like, scale it up and then sell them all the product and all that shit. That's the way to make money. But that's the way to make money. But that's a tough way to make money
for sure
for a long period of time because people call you out, right? You get seen out. So then you become this purist of a gym, and then you become the purist of a gym, but you have a cap ceiling, so you can only do so much, right? So
totally.
Then so gyms are passion projects, just like YouTube's a passion.
It was 100%. It is,
right?
And like you've made it again. The luck of the draw for me, it's like I'm lucky. If I had a gym, like,
it'd be tough.
It would be tough, and I say that because if I had a gym in the sense of like what he refers to as gym ownership and stuff like that. It's a little different here, right? Because my relationship, because of this, because this is here, because like it is a passion project, and I've luckily been able to make my passion project facilitate other things.
Yeah,
and
like this.
It's like this, and then who knows what comes from everything else that this is. Even in amongst here, like
can transpire to be something different. Right?
Exactly. This is an office building now. Like now, this gym has provided me with different an office to now like open whatever the fuck I want it to be. It's cool that way.
And that's where like that's that whole push for like I call it diversity, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So you have one gym, but you have like 4 different outlets. Like I joke around with like other real estate guys, and they're like, man, I'm diverse. I have I have coin laundry, I have parking, I have Airbnb. I'm like, yo, that's not fucking diversity. You have a fucking rental property and you have income that comes from that. That's not diversity. Diversity is completely different. Now you are in if I look at you, for example, with what you just said, you're a business owner, so you have income from your business. You have multiple facets of that you can get. That is not diversity. So just because you are just because you're doing personal training online, that's not diversity. No. Because that is your business.
Yes.
Whereas this part of it is now I have real estate. I'm renting and I'm re-renting a portion of this building, and I'm getting paid. So that is like arbitrage of rental, right? Of your rental, right? So that's a different business. That's diversity. Doing more shit in this business, not fucking diverse. So people kind of miss that thing, and they're like, well, I have multiple sources of income, and I'm like, no, that is true on paper, but it's not really true when it comes to if shit hits the fan game, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important, right? I think it's like if you're diverse that way, that shit hits the pan. It's just having multiple things, man, right?
Totally.
And I had a conversation with somebody else the other day, and they're like, man, but you can make more money if you just focused on one thing. And I'm like, that is true, but you have more stress, number one. And number two, you're building more walls around you, right? So the wall is higher. Like this wall is only 7 feet now because you have a gym. Yeah. If you had 4 gyms and you're dedicated and you have personal training, then this wall is fucking 25 feet. Yeah. And you can be more successful, but this wall is way higher. If you want to go on vacation or spend some more time with your kid or you get sick, you're fucked.
Do people not get that though?
Nobody gets it.
But they don't because they're not programmed that way. Like it's almost like an ADD thing for my diversity.
It's a chase of the cat.
It's like a 70% thing that you were saying. Like I'm a 70% person. Like
don't be perfect.
It's like, but I feel like I'm wired to like, okay, Jim's like doing well, doing it.
Just leave it. Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
This something else. Like, but
exactly. Yeah.
Versus like building within all the time is like everyone can't be.
Yes.
That almost might seem like people will say I'm. Irresponsible.
Doing, Don't worry. But you know what? You know what? I could say that the barrier happens. The barrier is always you.
Yeah.
Right. If Ian wanted to be the face of this business and only be the face and was restrictive to others to have a face,
sure.
Because everybody has a different like clout level. Everybody wants to have a different like impression level. Everyone at work ethic, right? Everybody's different. So if you said this is my gym and my face is on the front of this building, and every piece of literature that goes out about Showtime Fitness, I want to make sure that my face is there. That kills your business, right? Like, so that's the problem. So because you are not, I want my face to be in the front, you can take a back seat. You can sit back there while guys do things, right?
Nothing changes,
That's like 70% is the best to be, man.
Yeah.
Right? People think that to be 100%.
One more thing then. Do you crypto? We don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but nothing at all?
Nothing at all, man. I know. Nothing at all.
Reluctantly or like just despise it?
No, I'm just selective in what I'm doing. And yeah, like crypto's hard, right? Crypto's hard. I've been burned. I've been burned many, 20 times many times in markets.
Yeah.
I've made crazy money. I had this like one trade where I shorted Amazon. It was more an option. So I put against Amazon, and it was like it was 2 days out, and there was so much pressure on Amazon to blow this thing up, and it was like so much pressure. And as I shorted it, like in the money, I put like 15 grand down, and my pay was like 250 grand. It was like huge. I fucking killed it,
Yeah.
So I had a really good one, and then I've had really bad ones, and I've had ups and downs, and like because I've had ups and downs, and it was like we all do things, I think, in our lives to get to the point where we're either emotionally beat up, where we're like, fuck, we just got fucked, and we're like, we can take like a day, we can sleep it off, and then maybe we need 2 or 3 sleeps to sleep it off, and that's as far as I want to go. If it's more than that, I'm like, yo.
So it's almost like the volatility of it. The Mike at 40 doesn't want it.
The Mike at 40 doesn't want to study it because I'm already in the young game with YouTube.
Sure.
So I'm like, I don't need to be. Young with
that's
crypto,
perfect. That's a most honest answer, the most respectful answer I could get. Not because it's not like I don't know. I'm not crazy a little bit, but it's not like
guys are making money.
I don't think it's anything. I don't think the place for it. Nothing. It's like anything.
So I will tell you something about this Colombia thing. So I really do appreciate that it's there for this reason, because I could say, like, I'm really on the fence about this investor piece my dream is more, as I said, like 7 or 8 properties or 8 spots in different countries. But this Colombia thing, because it's the start of like let's call it a $2 million project.
Yeah.
Now I'm reluctant to either take investors. I can do it myself, or do I take investors and then jump on this party so that I can build more in other countries, right? But one way to do it in a sexy way is to be like, hey, I'm creating this NFT, and because I have this NFT, you can have a partial investment in this. You can have like 25% off all my courses or whatever. You can have 30% off like one-on-ones with me, and I can grow your brand, whatever, right? I can have this NFT as a utility to have all these pieces.
Sure.
So that was like cool. I could do this, and I can have that. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. That's
where I'm at.
That's like the most. That's
fundamental
and real utility way to approach it.
Yeah, to have
like, but then when they pay you fucking a bunch of crypto, you're like, now what do I do with it?
No. So it's funny when I was doing my
NFT costs this, you're like, you're forced in the game now.
Exactly. Which is fine. Because then the trading of because I mean, like, then it's easier to move the money and all this other bullshit, right? You know what I mean? So then I'm still figuring out the old way of like how to like the old dogs in like Panama. How do they figure out their money in Colombia? I want to figure out what's going on, right? So at least I kind of understand. It's still fresh. Again, I don't know how long this is so new that if you want someone with real money, the ones with real money are the ones that have made so much money in crypto that they're like, fuck, I got to spend it somewhere. So this looks like a good opportunity. Let's put our money there.
True.
Then the only problem, you know what? Getting the money to fund this thing for me doesn't seem like a problem. Because I feel like I have enough that I've done that I can be like, look, man, this is the right person. If you want me to cross collateralize a building to show you that this money's safe, I don't give a fuck. I'll do it if I needed the money there, right? But I think the part that bothers me the most, the number one reason why I, at the moment, just on the fence, is having a boss. That is the problem.
Yeah.
Having a boss is like, whoa. I'm not that I'm a control freak, but I'm like, guy, I'm like, Mike at 40 here just doesn't want to fucking listen to you wanting to have balconies on this project. We're not putting balconies.
Totally. Yeah, just because you got too much money, you need to spend it.
Yeah. So that's the only reason I think. Am I worried this is gonna fail, or am I worried this is gonna blow up or whatever? Not really, because like the Chinese do in Africa, right? The Chinese are not North Americans where we want short-term goals when we invest in a company. The Chinese will buy something and realize 10 years later this is gonna pay dividends.
Sure.
That's the thing. They're the long-term game. And I think like this is for me is a long-term game. It might take 3 years for me to have all these 8 Airbnbs up, and they might make $3,000 a month each, so we'll call that $27,000 a month. It costs $1.5 million. I'm fine with that, as an example, right? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm in my path of what I'm thinking. But you never know. This fucking political guy come in and fucking kibosh this. Somebody could totally rip me off.
Yeah.
Who knows? But one thing I will say, like an example of dollars per square foot over here, if you want to build something in Canada or not in Ontario right now. These numbers are obviously very debatable, but let's say like 180 at the very, very, very cheap side to like, I would say like 250 really is the number to $300 per square foot if you want to build something, right? There you can build stuff for $70 a square foot. So the math is like, it doesn't no comparison. And it's like you can build modern, sexy shit there with no regulations or less regulations than you have here. They might be regulated on how much you could put there, but they're not regulated in the design of it like we are here. Okay, like you've got heritage beams, you gotta have heritage beams there. You gotta have, like, there's modern houses, you can't put a traditional. You got traditional, you can't put modern. Like, you can't put 2 stories, you can only put 1.5 stories. Like all this nonsense, So, which I get. They just want easy, so they're like, vanilla.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I don't know. It is a crazy world. Sorry, I'm just looking at this guy to make sure nobody messaged me. Okay.
Yeah, no. I actually have it's funny.
I'm good though. But
as soon as I've been basically waiting for it to come about for me, but I'm getting the last space in this gym in the building in the end of May. But ultimately, I want to do the lights you have.
Yeah. So I ordered them from Alibaba. They
really?
But it took me like 6 months to get. They had to build them. You can't get them in Canada. Like, good luck. There's crazy amounts of money. Like signage. If you want to get sign done here, it's fucking huge money. You got to order from China. Put on a container, and then it comes. But it's long. Fuck, it takes forever. So, but then you just design them. Right? You design them you want. You just get the measurements. It's all in centimeters, anyways. You just measure it out, and then
then you build them, or you build them yourself.
No, they come shelled out, and then they come. They're simple, man. They're just like. They're like basically bent metal to look like you can look like hexagon or whatever, and then inside there's just strips of LEDs, and then they have a fucking clear panel on top of them, and then they just go up and you just
hang down.
Yeah, hang down.
I want to do that, and then I'm probably gonna actually redo the other side to match because I just like that. I really like that.
It's
like
popping,
the
man.
setup and
dude, 100%.
Some nice black walls and
nice
I think bright lights.
I think the more relevant you can be, the higher dollar amount you can have, and then the more it reflects you, right? So it all kind of fills in the vibe. And man, I would always like push that whole thing. It's like you gotta perfect what you have around you now in case you don't have the time to do it later. So Mike at 40 because he doesn't work out at all and he needs to get healthier, which is why like when I was in South America or North Central America in the wintertime, I was always walking and I was super healthy. So it felt great, super healthy. As soon as I come back here, fucking eating Dorito chips and shit, sweet chili heat.
Work out
I don't work out anywhere, man. I just don't work. My brain works so hard and my body's lazy. Right, my body's always working. I'm moving around, like I am carrying shingles and stuff like that for my guys every now and then. I'm moving around. I'm going to different locations. I'm always moving. Like as I said, this week I was in Toronto twice. This week doesn't look like a lot, but twice this week. Went back and forth. 3 times this week. Sorry, no, twice this week. Back and forth, and then like I've got 3 reviews to do, and then I got this event I got to take care of, and at night I'm doing obviously kids soccer and basketball and all this stuff. So you're always like moving, right? To go to the gym.
Yeah, I know.
It's
convenient for me, but like I'm not as busy as you, but like you're always going. It's so
but I made a promise to myself though. I said like if my body was gonna fail me because if my body could not do what my mind wanted to do, then I knew I was at that time, and I'm starting to get to that goddamn time.
Do you like big gyms or you like small gyms?
I think I just need to be moving. I don't think I even need a gym. I just need to go for walks, man. I just need to move this body, and I got to eat a bit better.
Is sleep important to you? Or are you one of those guys that like?
No, sleep is important. Yeah, sleep. If I don't have a good sleep, then my mind's not as sharp as it should be.
What time are you in bed at?
Midnight.
And then
to 1 sometimes. 8.
Okay, so like it's 6 hours.
I mean, I think I get probably 7.5. Okay, but it's also the time. I should really go to bed. I know that we all know this is fucking normal stuff, but I know that if I go to bed at 8 o'clock, or sorry, at 9 o'clock and wait, or 9:30, maybe 9:30, 10, and wake up at like 7 o'clock, I'll be better. I will be better. I have done that, and I have.
But you're not one of those guys that like, no, I only need 3 hours of sleep. I sleep when I'm dead, type of thing.
No.
Time and place.
It's sleep when I'm dead is tough because like as much as I say that and I'm like Tupac was like, yeah, you can sleep when you're dead, I was like, yeah, you're right, and I'm like, I'm never sleeping, but you have to sleep because then you suck. You suck. Your brain's not there.
Time and place, like you have whatever deadlines or like if you. But I'm the same, and I'm always like interested on like successful and just respectable people that like not many of them say I'll sleep when I'm dead. They're like you'll go a week like not a week, but like you'll have these days where you're back and forth, get a couple hours sleep, but then you're like back to sleeping. It's not like no, I don't need to sleep.
And if money pushes you, that's even more of a thing. Like I'm not my 20s to 30s anymore, but I would say like when I had to go like do something, let's say do a roofing job, and I would like I could do a repair myself. Let's say I could go up on a roof, repair myself, and I knew that nobody knew how to do it because they couldn't hire the right guy or whatever, and I'm like, they hired 2 guys here, and I'm like, these guys all made it leak, and I'm like, it's cost them $20,000 in damage. I can give them a $1,500 bill here in 20 years ago, and then do that, and then get that money, and I was like, wow, I don't need sleep for this. I'll drive 2 hours to make $1,500 in a day, right? Then I was like, wow, this is amazing. That stuff that is that's like excitement and adrenaline that keep you up, you know what I mean? Or if you're going on a trip and you wake up,
totally.
But I think those days of like, I mean, everybody's got through them, but those days of like waking up really early in the morning and then like just sitting on the toilet, taking a dump and thinking, man, my eyes are burning, my body doesn't want to move. And I'm like, those days are so long ago.
How I relate to that is kind of like bodybuilding and like just doing every single thing you could do to the maximum, and like waking up in the morning and just like not being able to open your eyes. It's what was I ever doing, and why was I ever doing? I was half the person I am then like getting being like healthy and
like I you know what, this is another conversation that I had with like really healthy people, right? And I said this, and it was hard to explain, and maybe you could explain it better or different, and it's part of your business, so this might cross some lines here, but
no.
I always just like to be open about what I talk about, one of the things, and maybe I need to clean up my thoughts here, but one of the things that I think is this, is like, so like, let's say like these IBBF pros or whatever, right? They need a product. So they need somebody that really is as a human, that is ultra determined to be perfect. So you will have people in this space that are perfect, that are just want to have better bodies and just be this product that they need, that the judges require, that a human can dictate to you what you need to look like, what you need to be, and all this stuff. So what ends up happening is that you have people that may or may not be designed to be that person end up in this space, and they have made it to like the first test, or you know what I mean? But to continue down this path is difficult because they require enhancements. They require all these pieces to be this person. So the original intent right here was to be a better person to view, but then what you end up being is like a overly
for sure
beat up.
It's the epitome of it.
Which is what most businesses are about. Right. And so then like people, they're like, oh, I want to be like a competitive bodybuilder, and I'm like, listen, I want you to be the best person you can be, and if that happens to be as close as you can to be competitive, win. But if it's like, I want every goddamn strand in my left fucking thigh to pop, and if it doesn't pop, I'll be disappointed, I'm a failure, that's a problem. So that's where it's like tricky, where like mental health in that space is so tough. So when I look at that, and I'm like, that's just one business, and you can look at that as every business. It starts off in good intentions, but for some reason we get curved, and we just go this way, right? And I'm like, the intent to be the best person you can be is why you started, right? Which is why I'm like, I only want to be fit, and I'm never going to be an IBP or IBFF, whatever it is. I'll never be that person because that's not me. But I will say, like, you need to be healthy just so that you can consistently live a positive, effective, live life in its best.
Totally.
Case,
that's like
right? What I mean, right? Like, which is what I see that you're doing, right?
And that's like why I basically, and I was never going to be that person. Like, like I was doing it because I don't know why. Like,
it's a start.
Like,
you don't know. You walk back down.
Right. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. I liked doing everything in that
the environment
world to the fullest. But I came to a strong realization that I started a year or two into the gym. I was like, if I want to be long-term successful entrepreneur, whatever, happy in general, I can't do this because it's all here or all here.
You got to pick exactly.
I put business on hold, growing this business and my future on hold every single time I put everything else into this basket. Because like the bodybuilding and fitness is so all or nothing, and if you actually all are or nothing, then the business is on hold. I could never grow a business, and I said, I gave the justification to myself at the time was, if in 5, 10, 15 years from now I have a business and a lifestyle that lets me take off everything I want for 5 months or 6 months of the year to allow me to do this, and I still have this passion to do it, and as I get closer to what I thought that would be, I move away from. For sure. And then again, honestly, that's not a passion at all. Other than just being healthy and everything,
which is what's supposed to be.
What it's supposed to be. I'm glad I had that realization then, saying, like, if I want to do this in 10 years when the gym or whatever I'm involved in allows me to take 6 months off of life and do a bodybuilding show, then I'll do it then. And I know now that I'll probably, again, who knows? Who
knows? But you know what's funny? Because, so two things. One is I said this and like, people that were in this space were like, what the fuck you're talking about, until I explained my case. So one of the things I said, and I realized this in my 20s, is that the people that are at the gyms all the time, dedicated to the sport and always like hammering their bodies and trying to do the best they can, for whatever reason, the people that this is totally my opinion. Okay? They were just never wealthy.
You can't be.
That's wrong. They were always broke.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. They were always focused on this, so they were very good at the picking up girls game. Like that was like, they were dominant.
You
like
can't be. You can't.
They were all about their bodies. They'd get all kinds of attention, and it was just feeding this fuel to stay here and always be poor.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're fundamentally poor, right?
For sure.
Until the internet showed up. Until Instagram showed up, there was a few people that made that change. It's like, holy shit.
Totally.
Attention. Somebody told them at that point, or they listened to something and said, right now, right place, attention is value, is currency. I'm going to take this attention, I'm going to spin it, and I'm going to fucking push this thing and make money. And those guys are killing it. So, that's the path. Today, it's all internet.
Yeah. And that's 1% of those people that are doing it that way. Like, because from a very little standpoint, the more money you can put into your bodybuilding,
yes,
the more better off bodybuilding you'll be.
Yes.
It goes back to my reason why I can't grow a business and be a best bodybuilder I want to be, because if it's $50 here and $50 here, it's all going here. The gym's going to wait till I'm done.
Exactly. So it's an expensive sport.
That's your opinion, and it's literally as literal as it gets when it comes to like, you know, bodybuilding and you know, again,
a business.
That 1% or that top percent that could play social media and be that fitness enthusiast freak bodybuilder. They win. They win. The rest are like easily called out on social media, and they're not meant to be. And it's like
so you have to like sell like fucking spices or sell products or sell every goddamn thing you can, every post to put something, you know. But it is really interesting, man. Instagram and YouTube has given those people a platform, and that's amazing because some of them have rolled with it and have been very, very successful.
Sure, you know? But even then, it's like are you really being you? Like you're not. A fraction of that top percent are being genuine. Are like, you know,
nobody's being. I don't think a very small amount being genuine. But really, at the end of the day, it's like you think about what is all this for. It always relates back to like, for some reason, it always relates back to money. Like I'm doing this all for money, and one of the really key things about the internet is that the only people that win are extremes. You don't win if you're in the middle.
No, totally.
You're a fucking loser in the middle, to be honest, you know? But I think now it's finally getting to like the whole like humility point. We're getting to the like the honesty, integrity, who you are. I mean, we're still going to get trumped by fucking guys in Lambos sometimes, right? Girls, guys, Lambos, houses, real estate, fucking, there's still those trumpers that people will be like, oh my God, huge house. You know, what do you think? But at the same time, I think like if you want to grow a real business, if you said like, hey man, this is a real wood table and not veneer, and then like it's 10 years later, it's still a fucking real wood table and not veneer, you're a king.
Exactly. It's kind of like, you know, you can be that way, or you can be as I kind of always relate it back to Joe Rogan, but like you could be as authentic since day one, and look what he's like, you know, the biggest like influence on
He also doesn't care what he doesn't
exactly, but that comes back to like he doesn't care today as much as he didn't care 15 years ago when he started it, and it's like.
But society in Canada changes that, because society in Canada doesn't allow you to speak up; it only allows you to stab from the back. That is one thing I've learned about people here, and it's only because I came from a different country, and I came here and I was like, oh, sweet, you know, and it was so nice. And then I realized, fuck, people talk shit about me all the time behind my back. Yeah. And I'm like, what's up with that, you know? Which is what makes Joe Rogan different, because he'll actually just speak the fucking truth. And if you speak the truth, it's just so easy to never lie, right? You know, and I even still
take it or leave it again. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, man, there's so many people that lie. Holy fuck, it's just crazy, man. Like, I see people on social that will like trade stocks in the stock market, and they'll do it like you can join any trading account today, and you can open up a free account, right? You open a free account and they'll put in like play money. People are using play money on their fucking play account, and they'll screenshot that shit and show how much they made and lost every day. I'm like, that ain't your motherfucking money.
No kidding.
And they'll put like 4 million, and I'm like, listen, buddy.
You probably don't even have $400 in the bank.
You might have 40 grand in the bank, but you don't have 4 million cash in the bank, you know? And you see that and you're like, okay, that's funny. And then you see like people they're like, sweet car. And I'm just like, guy, when will this shallow shit end? But it will not, because it will never end, you know? And like, maybe I'm getting fucking old. I do like shallow shit sometimes, don't get me wrong, but it should not identify you, right? You know what I mean?
A genuine person notices a genuine person, and if you're not a genuine person, you just it's a reverse magnet.
Sometimes I do like listen, man. There was this. We went to Distillery District like 5 years ago. We went to this place, and they only sold beds, and this bed was like $75,000. This bed. And I didn't obviously take a picture of it and be like, look at my bed. No, I was like, I had to ask if I could lie on this bed. I laid on the bed, and I was like, this is a fucking $75,000 bed. Just knowing that, and knowing I grew up in like a money fucking hungry Dubai place, like here, I'm like, holy shit, 75 grand. I'm like, I can be egotistical and fucking be shallow as fuck and love this $75,000 bed. It's just crazy to think, you know what I mean? And I mean, obviously, these are all just man-made items, right?
Yeah,
like the bed, the fucking 75 grand, they're all man-made items. You know what I mean? But like, it's just we want to be better as humans, man. And it's just crazy how it's really taken over people. But it's really gonna be interesting, man, how social media kind of plays out, because everybody's attention is on their phone, and that's why we're doing so well. We're doing well. It's a double-edged sword. Like, as much as I say like fucking people are on their phones, I'm successful because people are on their phones from all my businesses. You know, so. It is
a
hard one,
tool,
man.
And you just got to figure out how to like plug it into your network.
Yes,
and
it's a tool. So like, don't post too much family shit. Don't post too much. Like, you got to post the right amount of stuff that you're humble enough that people see who you are. But then post stuff that also what you do, so that people know what you do, because most people are in business and most people are working, so they want to see other stuff about work sometimes, you know. And they don't always want to see your dog looking cute all the time, right? You know what I mean? They want a mixed bag of everything, you know. So I don't know, man. That's what it is. But like, other guests that you've had here, what kind of feedback have you had in terms of like where like, if you had a general theme of where people would talk about here, and whether they see like either this, you know, the future or like something they're concerned about, what would you say? I don't know.
I don't know. I think everyone, because it's so, honestly, because it's just like this conversation, no one, there's no prerequisites. There's no,
it's free flowing.
Yeah. So everyone it's, I think I bring in people that are genuine, again, because they're in that ecosystem and can relate with it. So it's very much like optimistic and like and supportive, and I'm a naturally curious person, so it's easy to talk to. It's easy to like, you know, even someone I talk to every day, it's like I could still come on and have a conversation, and it's all very genuine conversation. So I don't know.
Like nobody is. I guess the question is am I on an island thinking that, like, I wouldn't say that like we're doomed, but are we on an island? Am I on an island thinking that like the world has changed? And I'm not saying like, I'm not complaining about the money, but like complaining that like the path we've had is different, so the thinking needs to be different.
No, I think, you know? I think a lot of more realists. Okay. You know, and like very not naive, but that comes back to like just the type of person. No, like I don't think so. I think like it's all about finding what works and and being a realist with what's going on.
Is important,
and like what's and keeping an open mind. Like an open mind comes with like having different perspectives and being open to different perspectives, and like listening and being attentive and alert. Like I think that summarizes just like
who you're seeing,
who I'm seeing.
Okay, good.
Because, you know, again, I don't think if you're all those things, you're, you know, you know, pessimist or anything like that. You're very much
in tune what you see.
Yeah, you know, like I had some people on, like I had a couple friends on that were like pretty heavily opinionated via through COVID, and I was like, I guess those would probably be the only ones that maybe have a different tone than the rest. And even having that, I was like, they're friends. Yeah. And I want to hear what they have to say. I may disagree. I still gain a different perspective of it. But that would probably be the only ones that are like different tones. Everyone else is very like, you know, you could sub in me with another person that I've had on, and you could talk to them, and I genuinely think it would be very much some of the same conversations.
And like, so the ones that are like opinionated, I find that it's very like they're the masses, right? They're definitely, especially with what's going on here. I think that there's the masses. Unfortunately, I don't think nobody can do anything about it. It's not like people are like, oh, like I'm pissed. And I'm like, okay, good for you. Like, I mean, like we only have a choice to vote, really. You know what I mean? You can't fucking stand up and be like, fuck you, we're gonna do something. I think that changes, and that's why instead of doing all that side, I was just like, hey, I'm just gonna look somewhere else. It's way easier.
Yeah, right. Like just take your own thoughts and like do something with it. Then you know, don't like sit and complain.
And we just want to be better people, right? That's the fucking. But we want to be better people, and we want to make sure. We just want to make sure, and that's why I'm doing these things. And I'm like not doing it for the money at all. I'm doing it because one, like I have the space, and I'm like, cool, it'd be cool if I filled like you, right? Filled with people to talk about stuff. And then I'm like, hey, I want to bring people that are like want to push and want to find out and want to learn more about what's going on in the world, and like get their opinions. Like maybe in Toronto, maybe the markets are not fucked. Maybe they're amazing. I don't know. Like, or maybe someone in Sudbury says like, no man, like this is untapped. Like we all need to go there. We're like, perfect. Let's set up a team. Let's go. You know. Yeah. Or somebody says, you know what, man, like you should really look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is like the best place. I don't know.
Yeah. You ever get it? Is there any? I've heard excuse me, in the last couple of months, real estate agents bring up Calgary.
So Calgary, there's something to do Calgary with the rental, with like kicking people out. So there's this big push right now, to kick people out. And it's like a big thing, right? Because
specifically in Calgary, or is this like the short-term rental stuff?
Because there's not a lot of units in the city, because everybody's converted, a lot of them converted short-term units, and there's just no inventory, right? Obviously, everyone knows about this stuff. Yeah. But I mean, I'd say like half my rents are underpaying. Like I have people paying $550, and I have people paying $1,350.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have a whole bunch in between. So I mean, obviously, it would be way better for me financially to kick the 550s to 700s out, and that'd be like 12 of them.
Yeah.
You know, as an example, in a 36 unit building, I kick them out and thing. But I just don't kick people out because I'm like, everybody needs a home, right? And I'm like, I don't really need it. You know, I'm fine the way I am. But the whole wave now is like dollars. So in Calgary, the laws are easy to kick them out.
Really? So they're just kicking them out, trying to go up?
Not that easy, but the laws are easier to kick out, and also it might not be as Ontario has this really big push to buy, like we're in an investment driven society in Ontario to buy rental properties. Like it's a big push. In Victoria, in Vancouver, the cap rates are so low. Like the cost is so expensive, you don't make enough money. It's like very little.
Sure.
It's like 2% cap rates for really nice stuff. Here it's like 4.5, 4 and 5. So there's more value per se in Southern Ontario, and in Canada, everybody lives on the bottom. Nobody lives on the top, right? Everybody lives on the bottom. So there's not so many places you can go. So we're in this hub of like investment, buy real estate because it's going to win. It's the best thing ever, blah, blah. So Calgary's good because like I really like Canmore. Like Canmore's have you been to Canmore?
No.
Oh, it's awesome, dude. Like it's awesome. It's if you like outdoor stuff. I'm not a huge outdoor stuff, but you can really see like when you leave Ontario. I mean, when you leave Southwestern Ontario, and you go to anywhere else for the most part in Canada, you're like, this is Canada.
Yeah, totally. I've been like drove when I was young, West Coast or East Coast to West Coast down through all South Dakota. So
it's
like
beautiful.
I would love.
It's beautiful. Like it's beautiful. So you're thinking, okay, man, like I can buy a place in Alberta, but Calgary is a good push. I mean, the oil and gas is always tough, but it's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
We always need oil and gas. We make everything with oil and gas, you know. So
I don't know. That's probably a broad question.
No. I think that's good. I think all of Canada's jacked up, you know. So
do you have any? You guys don't have a podcast, obviously.
No, I think with the car stuff, it's interesting, man, because we put like sweat, blood, and tears in like some videos, and they like totally shit the bed, and then some videos we don't spend a lot of time on. Like, we've got 5 videos I think now that have over 1 million views, which is cool, you know.
What about like even investment wise, like investment?
I should like
realm.
I should do podcasts, you mean?
Yeah. Like I'm not saying you should. I just like do you just the voice out there more type of content.
Yeah, I should. I mean, that was my I always have these dreams, right? We always have dreams. I need to get on. Part of it is talking, right? Like, so part of me coming here, like, there's obviously benefits to doing this. One of them is me talking, right? Just me talking. It's like me thinking, and then me getting into it. Then now when I go on Sunday to, you know, and I have 30 people in front of me that I'm talking to, I'm not as like, holy fuck, where do I start? What do I talk? I'm talking, right? You know,
I get it.
I did a high school before I did my last one, and I was like, I just talked, and then I did the fucking like 3 days later I talked, and I was like, this is golden, right? It flowed, right? So I mean, this is kind of what that helps. But yeah, finances are important, but the problem is that everybody's opinion, everybody thinks their opinion matters.
Yeah.
But nobody's opinion really matters, right?
That.
So like for people to listen to my opinion, I have to have something. So for me to go and share like all my secrets on my phone and put on YouTube to get 50 people to watch it or 150 people to watch it, it's just so much effort. I might just tell people that I meet in person or have these masterminds or whatever that I have people in front of me, right? You know, so
for sure.
That's why kind of that metric changes for me when I can draw people in. Like it's something, I think it's something serious that a guy that was a car salesman 3 years ago started a YouTube channel, had all these things in the back burner, and when I used to tell people about it, I used to sit across from people who bought Audis from me, and they'd be like, and they'd be like, oh, real estate. And I'm like, and I never said, oh, I own this. I just said, oh yeah, it's crazy. And then they said, yeah, I have a couple of rent properties. Like, oh yeah, me too. And then we started exchanging, and then I was like, oh well, they're like, and I'm like, this is my experience. And then they're like, well, what do you have? And then I told them what I have, and then I think they were fucking floored. Yeah. But I never really pushed it on them. And then and I felt like, oh shit, that was kind of cool that I was like making an impact as a person. And then they started asking me questions, and then I built that trust, and it was very easy to sell them a car after that point. But it got me to where I needed to be for selling a car in that specific role. But what I think now is that it's pretty crazy that I had all this before, but nobody really knew about it because there's nowhere to talk about it, right?
Big time.
And the fact that I can charge, like, I don't know, I'll tell you what, I charge people $2,500 per ticket to come see me, and I can make $25,000 less expenses per day for one day. That's a lot of money in my mind, thinking like, man, I used to sell cars for $300 a day. Not even a day. $300, not even a day. $300 just to sell a car. $300. Here I'm making $25,000. And from what? From information, from experiences, from, you know, so the information game is so cool to have. So now it's about like honing my experience and honing how I think things could change for the better for that person across.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I totally get that.
It's sick. It's just amazing. It's all done through fucking social, man. People are like, oh, fuck social. I'm like, yo, social's the best fucking thing that happened to me. There's no better game that has happened. But it takes time, right, to build that stuff. And I mean, it's just like guys, like this whole like Gymshark thing or whatever, like coaching people how to make gyms, or coaching people how to be a personal trainer, coaching how to teach. Like you can always be a teacher. Because I always say like an expert just needs to know a little bit more than you, then they're an expert, which is crazy, you know. But now you can charge for it if you wanted to, you know. And so now it's like part of it also is like, because now my time is becoming more like tighter and tighter because I'm doing these crazy projects and whatever, not projects, but like crazy things with my son and crazy projects and all this stuff we talked about. It's important to like select. I tell this to people. It's very important to make your time very valuable.
For sure. And that's all relative as you progress in your life too, right?
Yeah,
like
which I never thought.
Yeah,
like,
but you wouldn't, right?
I would never think.
Yeah.
Right, you know? Like when I was selling cars, my time was free. I sat there and I would die to talk to somebody about real estate. But nobody knew. Nobody knew that I was doing this, and I didn't think it was anything. I was thinking, hey, this is when I'm 60.
Yeah. I get it. That makes total sense.
And I'm like, I just have a roofing company, nothing crazy. And I'm like, okay, now I'm getting all this roofing work from everybody that watches my shit. I'm getting all this clout from YouTube. It's amazing, man. It is a really good space to be in. There's no complaints whatsoever. I just want more people to do it, really, and I just want people to learn from it. And if it can help them, that'd be awesome. That's basically where I'm at, because money makes no difference to me in my life right now, and growth, right? You know.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. Well, next time we'll
fucking open that door, man.
Wall down and have you.
Yeah, man. If you got to do that.
I do. There's a couple things. There's like, again, those lights, this roof, and even
I'll
just
send a guy.
Real estate in general. I'm like,
yeah, man, absolutely
on the verge of, you know, wanting in on something just better.
Yeah,
overall,
just be careful. I mean, obviously, man, I know you started. I hopefully didn't sway you too hard. But
no, you didn't. The more information, the better. I'm not naive.
Man,
I'm not irresponsible. I just want better. I want personal growth and business growth, and you know, like
it's just really hard to see. Like, it's just really, really hard to see investments in real estate when, like, first of all, we're on a downturn, right? We're on a slight downturn right now. So theoretically, you could buy a deal if you wanted to. There would be opportunity. If it cash flows and the bank is willing to take the debt, fuck, do it, because at least it gets you in the game. But then if you get that person calling you about a toilet, get that person calling you about a furnace, get that person calling you about the neighbors next door, get that person calling you about the upstairs, like bullshit, right? You know what I mean? Like, you already have tenants here, and most of them are yours, but you could get bullshit, right? So that's the problem. And you have to realize, if you have that times 5, times 4, it's going to affect your, you know, your child, you and your child, you and your wife. It's going to affect all those pieces. So like, why do I want to get in that? And if it's going to pay me fucking 30 years down the road, why bother, right? I could those 30 years, I could invest in something different. It's opportunity cost. And if that opportunity cost is going to be a factor just for some fucking dream that we were told is the right thing to do,
it's not.
You got to question yourself.
Yeah, cool.
You got to think about that, right?
I get it. I 100%. I get that.
Yeah. So hopefully,
hopefully,
it just makes you think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just think. Just do the math and say, okay, I'm going to make this much money, or it's going to cost me this much money, and this is how much headache I could potentially have. Is it worth it? No. I could tell you, dude, that besides appreciation and like paying down and the mortgage paying down, it just needs to be a tax portion, because you got to think, if that property makes you, even after paying the mortgage down, it makes you $1,000 a month, and even if you get 3 calls from that tenant, or 2 calls from the tenant, those 3 calls are worth almost $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
3 customers, 3 tenant, 3 sessions, or whatever, right? Whatever you do, exactly. Whatever the case is, it's just not as lucrative as it should be. And I mean, people can be like, well, this fucking guy made lots of money in real estate. Yes, but I started in 2005. So you can't, it's all relative, man. You can't, there's no geniusness from doing it. There's just a genius from trying it, right? So I would always say, go down a path that's not as busy. Yeah. That's easy, right? Cool. Be the only guy.
Thank you very much, man.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me here. And
I got to come by your shop soon.
Yeah, man. Check it out.
Get it going.
Check it out. Yeah, check it out.